Hafaday and good morning. This virtual public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, and the Arts is called to order. It is 9 a.m. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on January 12th of 2022, with the second notice provided on January 18th of 2022. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on Bill number 213-36 COR, an act to add a new section 8119A to Chapter 8, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, establishing an exemption for the construction of a new 41 megawatt Cabras ultra-low sulfur diesel units on lots 261 and 257, U.S. Navy Apra Harbor Reservation, introduced by Senator Agustin. Upon conclusion of Bill 213-36 COR, we'll take a 5-minute recess before we hear testimony on Bill number 212-36 COR, an act to approve the terms and conditions of Guam Power Authority revenue bonds to refund outstanding Guam Power Authority revenue bonds, introduced by Senator Agustin. Before we proceed with hearing testimony, I would like to provide the panel participants with some general rules of conduct for this virtual public hearing. All participants must abide by the rules of conduct and quality assurance standards, including the chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name, title, and organization for record purposes. Please ensure that you are unmuted and that you are speaking clearly into your microphone. For group settings where more than one individual is present, please state your name before providing comment. From among the panel of senators, each member will be allowed to pose one question to an individual testifying for one round and be provided another round if necessary. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this rule of conduct will result in removal from the meeting room by the host. I would now like to welcome my colleagues who are joining us this morning. One moment as I look around and see which of my colleagues are with us this morning. I have Senators Jim Moylan, Tony Atta, Amanda Shelton, Talina Nelson, Chris Duenas, Joe San Agustin, Tello Taitagui, Speaker Therese Terlahi. One moment. Senator Mary Torres, Senator Joanne Brown. I think I got everyone. I also like to recognize Speaker PT.1 Pat. All right, with that, we'll proceed with discussions on Bill number 213-36 COR. I'll begin with giving the floor to Senator Joe San Agustin to present his statement as the bill's primary sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to provide a statement on Bill 213-36. The Guam Power Authority requested support for the introduction of legislation to authorize an exemption to the provisions of Public Law 2223 that prevent the construction of any power plant facilities within 1,500 feet of a school. And then Public Law 22-23 was enacted as a result of the Mechechi power plant that was erected immediately adjacent to 1M Guerrero Elementary School in Harmon. Several mitigation efforts were executed to address the emissions that were released. Released near the school. After these efforts were completed, the air quality was substantially improved with no reported issues by the school community or the patrons of the Dendro Sports Complex. While the proposed location of the new 41 megawatt generation for PT are within the area in question, GPS provided information that these generators will be running cleaner fuel that will substantially decrease the emissions from 13 tons to 7 tons. Additionally, the placement of these generators were determined as best suited to cut costs as they will be erected immediately nearby the authority's fuel tank system. I'm sure GPA will present on these issues. Mr. Chair, I thank you for allowing the hearing on this bill, and I look forward to hearing the testimonies of our power authority and the people of Guam, so we make a sound decision on the matter at hand.
Thank you, Senator San Agustin. We'll begin now with testimony from those who've joined us today. I'm going in order of participants based on how their names appear in the sign-in sheet, and the sign-in sheet was based upon order of how people requested to participate in the public hearing. The first person on our list is Mr. Sedfrey Linsongan.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I read the GPA resolution, PUC resolution, and many data regarding this power plant. That's why I believe I can see clearly, and I hope that the senators will choose well, because I believe I have this compelling argument not to support this bill. In retrospect, on October 30, 2019, the energy conservation agreement was signed between GPA and KEPCO. It stipulates that they will build 198 megawatts of power plant, 65 megawatt reserve, and 25 megawatt battery energy storage facility at Pukudu. Now, in my analysis regarding this contract, KEPCO is in default. Because right now, what they're trying to do is modify the total contract on their advantage. They want a 45 megawatt reserve to be installed at PT instead of Pukudu. At the same time, we're losing 24 megawatts. You know, the people of Guam are losing 24 megawatts of reserve power. Now, to add to the insult, they will be charging us fixed $2 million a year, you know, for operation and maintenance, and another 2.5 million of the variable operation maintenance and 0.025 kilowatt per hour, you know, that the energy that GPA would receive. That's just unacceptable. You know, this company, they won the bid because they are the lowest bidder. You know, based on the procurement law, it will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. That's why GPA awarded to them. Lowest meaning it's understandable. They're lowest in price. They beat 4 other bidders. Responsive, meaning they will comply with the agreement, the signed agreement. And then responsible, that they have the integrity, the experience, the character to finish the contract. You know, now the way I see it, they did not do their homework, or is their strategy to bid lower and then create this noisy, this unacceptable situation, because it's unfair to other bidders. You know, if you will modify the contract based on KEPCO's advantage, if that is the case, then other bidders could have bid them. You know, now they're crying that, oh, we cannot get the major permit process because it takes too long. And that's your fault. That's not our problem. You know, you sign a contract, and now when I check the PUC order, it is stated there by Mr. Benavente that if they will let them walk away, only $3 million will be liquidated from them. I wonder why, because this is a revenue funds, not federal funds. There's supposed to be a 15% bid ban. If they're not, if they didn't satisfy the contract, the liquidated damage should be implemented, and that is 25% of 1%. If the bid is $500 million, then they should be paying 1.25 million a day to the government of Guam. And the other thing is, the reason why we are building this Ukudo power plant is to eliminate other power plant at the future site. Now you will be installing another 45 megawatt at PT. Oh, come on. So it would be there forever. And there's a current law about the restriction. Not only that, there's so many problems with this bill. That's why before the GPA is very against the PT location because they reason out, it could be we're due for a tsunami, and so many other things. Now they're reversing everything. There's no more integrity on believing them, because I testified 2 years ago, against the location at Ukudo, and they're very strong and oppose strongly the power plant to be located at PT because of so many conditions. Now they're reasoning out that because it's close to all transmission. They knew that before, and that's not the point. The point here is the agreement. It's unfair to the bidders. It's unfair to the people at PT, to the students, and to the people of Guam, because this bill would increase the power rate, not decrease. Don't tell me the reason that the U.S. government or U.S. justice would implement the fines. We have extraordinary situation here. We have the rational basis that there will be more understanding and lenient, because this is not our fault. This is the fault of this contractor not honoring the agreement. You cannot be GPA shouldn't be holding hostage the people of Guam for this nonsense argument that this would increase the fine. We will be fined by the U.S. justice. That's not our fault. That's your fault. That's why the solution here is GPA terminate the contract or let KEPCO and implement the liquidated damage. Let KEPCO, if not, let KEPCO stick with the plan. They know about the major source permit. Don't tell me they don't know about it. They know because they've been experienced. They know that it would take longer than that. Then they're giving us a system that would emit more than 10 tons of hazardous air pollutants because of the major source permit requirements. They should modify the system and buy a better system that would be consistent with the major source permit. And besides, I don't see any letter from U.S. Justice that would justify the reason of GPA that to go with the minor or source permit. All I see there is their statement, but no letter from the U.S. Justice. And the solution here also is terminate, and then GPA terminate the contract and call for another contract. That's how it is. You cannot just hurry up everything. We have to do it right. Second, if GPA will not terminate, governor should interfere because she is in the control of the all agency according to Organic Act. She should have GPA terminate the contract, or she terminate the contract. Third, the Attorney General should file a lawsuit against GPA or against KEPCO for not honoring the contract. Because if this is the case that would be a practice of agency, it would happen again and again and again. And this power plant at Ukudo will not meet its its purpose that to eliminate all the power plant at all locations. True, there are generators at Jose Rios and other school, but that's why we're building this Okudo. And at the same time, the governor also can use some funds from the American Rescue Act to assist GPA or help support GPA to remove all these generators close to the school because of the money that he got from Rescue Act funds. So yes, Mr. Senator Ridgell, thank you very much for calling this hearing, and Senator San Agustin, this is not a good bill. So I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Linsongan, for your testimony this morning. Next on the sign-in sheet is Michelle Vocolo, Micronesian Climate Change Alliance.
Alpha Day, thank you all for having me here and letting me speak today. My name is Michelle Vocolo, and I am testifying today as an environmentalist, an activist, and as a ratepayer. I've been publicly speaking out against this power plant since 2019, and I'm here today to urge our senators to vote against this for the sake of our island and the teachers, students, and staff at Jose Rios Middle School. As I have said dozens of times in the past, KEPCO is an irresponsible business with a long history of scandals and corruption. All one needs to do is Google KEPCO corruption, and you will find dozens of articles. This company took major shortcuts when constructing the solar farm, which led to the destruction of Marble Caves, which is still closed today. And so I just don't understand how we can trust them to operate a 41 megawatt power plant that is 1,200 feet from a school. I would also like to reference a conversation between Senator Sabina Perez and Mr. John Benavente in a 2019 public hearing. Senator Perez asked Mr. Benavente if an assessment was done for a power plant that was closer to the source as opposed to building a power plant near a high density area like Micronesia Mall and the hospital. In his own words, Mr. Benavente says, "We had many presentations, many discussions on that. The reason why you're trying to move it away from the port area is in case, of course, you have the potentials with all the changes in the environment, potentials for tsunamis that could take the whole island's energy grid." So that was in his own words, and now GPA is kind of going against themselves and saying that the port is the best area. I would also like to remind Senator Ridgell, Senator Perez, Senator Nelson, Senator San Agustin, Senator Shelton, and Senator Terlahi about their open commitments to the environment and their public commitment to support efforts to address the climate crisis, as this power plant will keep our island dependent on dirty, depleting fossil fuels for the next 3 decades. There are already laws that prevent dirty power plants from being built near schools. Specifically, a 1993 law prohibits fossil fuel burning generators from being built within 1,500 feet of schools. And in 1993, 14 out of 15 senators, including Senator San Agustin Sr., listened to the concerns of the public and voted to establish the 1,500 feet setback and protect teachers and students from skin disease from inhaling toxic fumes and illness. Furthermore, the US EPA has reported that fuel burning power plants create emissions that can lead to asthma and heart problems. It will emit air pollution that will create a toxic neighborhood for the students attending Jose Rios Middle School and the people surrounding that area. Allowing the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure, especially in the vicinity of a school, is a direct affront and act of chronic violence to a community's health, safety, and well-being in both the short and long term. Our children deserve to learn and play in a toxic-free, healthy environment. And finally, it's been almost 2 years of relentlessly protesting this power plant and speaking out against it and raising awareness on KEPCO. And sometimes it seems as if my efforts are almost like they don't matter, that nobody's listening. But if this bill is passed and KEPCO mismanages this power plant, which wouldn't be uncommon for them as they have done this in the past, or if a storm comes and damages the plant, or if the power plant becomes a stranded asset in the years to come when the whole world transitions to renewable energy, I really want you to remember my testimony and those who are testifying against us today. And I want you to remember me and those like me who spoke out against us today. and said that it was not a good idea and that it was not in the best interest of our island students, teachers, staff, and people, and future generations. So thank you for having me speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Vocolo, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Christian San Nicolas, Micronesian Climate Change Alliance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christian San Nicolas. I'm here today to urge the senators to please vote no on Bill 213. Just yesterday, the Office of the Attorney General of Guam announced that they are going to investigate that indeed KEPCO and the contractors knew the dangers of flooding and knowingly failed to implement proper soil and erosion control measures for their Marble Cave project just weeks before the incident. I urge the legislature to please oppose Bill 213-36 because how can we trust them? For the safety of the community and the students of Jose Rios Middle School, I urge the legislature to not amend the current law that stops power plants from being built within 1,500 feet of a school. I'm not too sure why we are looking to building even closer to a school. It doesn't make too much sense to me. I also request that we hold a full investigation on the procurement of KEPCO and find a more feasible option than placing it right next to a school, which the US EPA has also reported that burning fossil fuel power plants create emissions that can lead to asthma and heart problems. Please protect our children, the future people of Guam. They may not be able to speak up against this bill, which is why I have decided to speak today and ask you to please reconsider and please vote no on Bill 213. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. San Nicolas, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is Muñeca de Oro, Micronesia Climate Change Alliance.
Kafade, sorry. Buenas, Mananasizuas, everybody. Guahusi Muñeca de Oro. Familian Jezizu, Lazaro, Kotla, Calvos, and Manaitai. I have been living on Guam almost my whole life, and I am really dedicated to the protection and safeguarding of our natural resources, the ensuring that the next generations inherit a land that is healthy, clean, and prosperous. I have come from a long line of Chamorro stewards of our lands and nurturers of our culture. I have dedicated most of my life to the protection of our resources and also the uplifting of our cultural lifeways that have been dependent on our natural resources. I'm also currently sitting on the board of directors of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, and I'm really appalled that GPA would go through legislation to circumnavigate regulations that have been set by this legislative body in the past. These regulations are set in place to protect our environment, to protect our children. And I just also want to call this legislative body's attention to a document released by the US EPA entitled School Siting Guidelines. This was just released in August of 2021. And in this document, the US EPA puts recommendations for counties, for places across the nation that are building schools as to where schools should be placed and where different facilities should be placed if a school is near. And on page 66 of this document, it talks about large industrial facilities like this power plant. And it says that they shouldn't be within a mile of a school. Actually, in the same document, it says that a laundromat, a dry cleaning facility, and a gas station should be within 1,000 feet of a school. That a gas station has 1,000 feet from a school, should be 1,000 feet from a school, because it also has dangers that could be brought to the students. So so having this huge power plant within less than 1,500 feet from a school is incredibly dangerous. That's less than half a mile away. And power plants of this size, of this industrial size, cause air pollution, soil contamination, groundwater contamination, surface water contamination, accidental releases, spills of hazardous chemicals, odors, and heavy traffic of big vehicles that also release air pollution into the air. So these sorts of facilities, based on the US EPA's regulations and guidelines, and they recommend that they not be within a mile of a school. Of course, it's going to be hard for us and Guam, being such a small island, to place anything a mile away from a school. But this is definitely something that, based on the most recent US EPA recommendations, this definitely is way too close to a school. Even 1,500 feet is way too close to a school. So this is something definitely to consider as a body, and thinking about the future. Those on the CCU and those in office right now, how many of us are going to be around to live through the disparities and the complications of this power plant and of fossil fuels in general to the climate? It's really important that we think that we have a long-term vision. We had this time last year, or a little earlier in 2020, we were discussing having rooftop solar and on schools. And that would have been a better option for securing energy independence for our island, lessening our dependence on fossil fuels, bringing down the cost to ratepayers, and also just meeting our goals, this body's goals of being 100% renewable by 2045. These sorts of power plants are very costly. They also cost so much to maintain over the years. And since we're outsourcing this, many of the funds go out of our island and they don't stay directly here. Whereas if we were to transition to renewable energy, most of the renewable energy companies are locally headquartered and hire locally as well. So it'd be a really great, and there's so much, it's really great to start building the capacity of renewable energy on our island. And there's also so much more being done nationally in regards to energy that's really phasing out fossil fuels. To make these sorts of investments into fossil fuels, where it's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into fossil fuels at this point, with the climate crisis rapidly increasing and rapidly bringing threats to our islands and our region, it's very short-sighted of this body to vote yes on this specific bill. We really have to be thinking beyond 30 years and into the next 7 generations about what kind of island we want to leave our children, and really voting no to this law is the way to go. If you really want to be a good ancestor, we really need to be thinking about energy democracy and energy, and really freeing ourselves from fossil fuels. So please, senators, I urge you to vote no and to have a bigger long-term vision for what energy systems could look like for our islands. This is Usmasi.
Thank you, Ms. Dioro, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Fred Harecki, Chief Administrative Law Judge, Public Utilities Commission. Mr. Harecki, please unmute.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson Ridgell, senators. My name is Fred Harecki. I'm the Chief Administrative Law Judge of the Guam Public Utilities Commission. I'm presenting testimony today on behalf of the PUC and the acting chairman, Peter Montanola. Initially, however, I'd like to give an overview. This hearing is not about whether to approve KEPCO or not. The horse is out of the barn on that issue. KEPCO is the contractor. There is a contract that has been approved by the Public Utilities Commission, which is the Energy Conversion Agreement. There's no basis for terminating that agreement. And in fact, if the senators thought they were going to do that, that would be an unmitigated disaster for the people of Guam. There is a consent decree in effect right now that orders GPA to complete the power plant by April 2024. That's the 198 megawatt power plant. If GPA does not meet that deadline, if it does not complete the power plant, it is going to be subject to millions and millions of dollars of penalties and fines. So that simply is not an issue now. The KEPCO power plant is required by law. That is an order of the District Court of Guam. And I don't think that the senators would wish to violate a federal order of a court by somehow deciding that the KEPCO plant was no longer going to be approved. In fact, there is a contract. There's the energy conversion agreement. That was agreed to by GPA, by KEPCO, and approved by the Public Utilities Commission. And furthermore, recognized in the consent decree, which requires the completion of the 198 megawatt plant. Now, beyond that, there was some suggestion that the 41 megawatt plant at Cabras was somehow in the favor of KEPCO and was somehow a plot by KEPCO to take advantage of the situation. And that is not true at all. This issue came before the Public Utilities Commission. That is why the 41 megawatt plant was necessary. And I have attached to the testimony of Chairman Montanola, the order of the PUC. And I think if you read that, you'll see that very careful consideration was given to the issue of why it was decided that the 41 megawatt plant at Cabras should be installed. The problem basically was in the original agreement, the 65 megawatt reserve facility that was supposed to be at Okadu was not feasible at all. The US EPA did not want to have to go through the major source permitting process because it would have been taking too long. So minor source permitting became the only option for the permitting here. The problem with the 65 megawatt facility at Okadu was that it was only a reserve facility and could only be used for 500 hours a year under a major source permitting. That was completely ineffectual. It would have rendered the plant of little or no use to GPA. And what the PUC decided in its docket, the 41 megawatt plant is actually quite different. The original 65 megawatt plant was supposed to be only a reserve when KEPCO needed the power for the Okadu plant. But the 41 megawatt plant is subject to the control of GPA. So GPA will be able to use the power supplied by that plant to meet any deficiencies in the power system. It's GPA and not KEPCO that will determine when that plant is used. So overall, the PUC really carefully examined this issue and determined that the 41 megawatt plant was advantageous to GPA and the ratepayers of Guam. If the legislature were to heed these suggestions that somehow it's before you now whether to block the KEPCO plant, as I said, that would lead to an unmitigated disaster of fines, penalties, and power outages. We won't have sufficient power in the system if that plant is not built. So just to cover that one point, the 41 megawatt plant was determined by the PUC to be a necessary plant, advantageous to Guam and GPA, and also a necessary part of the Okadu power plant project. The PUC, as the testimony of Mr. Montanola indicates, has been involved in this project since the very beginning, almost 7 years or more now. And at every step, the PUC has carefully evaluated the need for the Okadu power plant. That's an issue that has already been resolved by the PUC, by GPA, by the US EPA, and the Department of Justice, that there is a need for that plant to be built, and it is required by law. As I said, it was not KEPCO that asked for the 41 megawatt plant to be approved. That was GPA's request, and PUC found it to be fully justified. The necessity of the change of location was something that we approved because of the change to a minor source permit. So again, that was necessary. My point is that the full justification and rationale for the 41 megawatt plant was vetted by the PUC. It was approved, as I recall, unanimously by all the commissioners that were present at the hearing, and that was in GPA docket 21-07. Now, really, the issue before you in this proposed bill 112 is not whether you approve of TEPCO or not whether you approve of the 198 megawatt plant, but whether you will grant an exemption to GPA authorizing the construction of the 41 megawatt reserve plant. And again, that 41 megawatt plant is essential to the Ukadu power plant project. If you don't approve the 41 megawatt plant, there's certainly a possibility that the entire project will fall through, thus placing Guam in jeopardy of violating the consent decree and also just not having sufficient power in the system to prevent outages. It is true that the current law, 12 GCA section 8119, does restrict the construction of a power generation facility with a capacity of more than 1 megawatt within 1,500 feet of a school. But I think the legislature has to look at this as taking the steps that are appropriate to comply with the consent decree, but also to comply with the interests of the people of Guam, which is that we have sufficient power in our system to prevent outages. The opponents seem to suggest that somehow, well, if we don't have the 198 megawatt, everything will be better. It'll preserve the environment, protect the environment. But the problem is, without that 198 megawatt plant, we can't even incorporate renewables into the GPA system. The reliability of that plant is needed to provide a basis for incorporating more renewables. And as I think you know, both GPA and PUC have been very supportive of expanding renewables in the system. But it still has been determined that as of today, there needs to be a reliable power source, still fossil fuel, that will create the situation where we can rapidly incorporate renewables into the system. So for those that are arguing somehow that the 198 megawatt plant would be scuttled, you are also scuttling the opportunity of incorporating more renewables into the system. So here I think the legislature must take steps to approve this exemption. It's really critical to the success of the whole power plant arrangements that's been devised and the work that's been done by GPA and the PUC for many years now. Unless the legislature approves the exemption, there is, as I said, a possibility that the entire power plant project could be derailed. And of course, some people seem to be saying that they think that's a good idea. But right now, the builder of the plant, subsidiary of TEPCO, that's Guam Ukadu Power, they have indicated that its lenders may not finance the new power plant unless this issue regarding the construction of the 41 megawatt plant is resolved. So potentially, if the legislature doesn't grant the exception, the entire Ukadu power plant project could fall through. And that is not a good thing for the people of Guam. It's a disaster. GPA has a plan, which the PUC has reviewed and supports fully, that all steps should be taken to build a reliable power system. With the Ukadu plant, many of the older, less environmentally friendly plants like Cabras 1 and 2, perhaps some of the diesels, those plants will all be able to be retired because of the new power plant. But without the exemption here, there's really a possibility that KEPCO might just decide to walk away from the entire project. And where is that going to leave Guam and the people with the consent decree? What's going to happen then? Because if you don't proceed now, you'll never have that power plant built by April 2024. That, I assure you, will be a big, major disaster for the people of Guam and will definitely have a terrible negative impact on the power system. All the planning and hard work that's been done, and remember, these aren't new issues. These have been fully vetted by everyone, PUC, GPA, US EPA. So to now somehow decide, well, we're just going to try to scuttle the whole project and not proceed ahead. Again, no basis for that at all. Without the reliable power provided by the Ukadu plant, it is very unlikely that GPA will be able to incorporate renewables into the system or meet the goal of incorporating as many new renewables. Finally, as to the exemption itself, there is no evidence at all that the construction of this 41 megawatt reserve facility at Cabras presents a risk of harm to either Jose Rios Middle School or its students. And the opponents seem to try to argue of all the harms of a fossil fuel power plant, but they haven't come up with any concrete evidence whatsoever to show that there is any harm here, other than speculation, allegation, but no specifics to demonstrate that the 41 megawatt plant would cause any harm to anyone. Now, the original 1,500-foot restriction, Public Law 2223, was apparently promulgated to address the Mecheche combustion turbine, which had been constructed within 500 feet of the J.M. Guerrero Elementary School. I would note it appears from the legislation that the legislation was actually enacted after the Mecheche plant was built. But that plant initially burned 0.5% sulfur diesel. And GPA took a lot of steps to make sure there was no harm from that plant. It raised the stack in the plant. It changed the fuel oil to 0.0015% ultra low sulfur diesel. And you know, that's a major change that's occurred since the original restriction was enacted into law. GPA is engaged in a master plan and program to reduce the sulfur emissions of all of these plants. And rapidly, all of the plants, and that will include the new 41 megawatt plant, will be burning the lowest ultra sulfur low diesel fuel. So we're talking about a situation in terms of sulfur and the pollution that is vastly and greatly improved since the time this exemption was first placed into law. As to Mecheche, has anyone heard any issues since the Mecheche plant was built? Have there been any suggestions that there was harm done to the students of J.M. Guerrero? There hasn't been anything suggested that there's a basis for this restriction or why even it was placed into the law. I would also note with regard to PD and Cabras, the Cabras area, you know, even I believe it was after Public Law 2223 was passed, the PD 8 and 9 units in Cabras were constructed. Those are larger units, I believe about, I want to say 80, I think it's 84 megawatts total. Those have been operating since the 1990s. And again, they are larger plants than the 41 megawatt plant. And what is the evidence of harm to students, to the school, anything concrete? Do we have anything in the record to show that there has been any adverse impact? The 41 megawatt plant, again, will burn the ultra low sulfur diesel. And even the PD plants, PD 8 and 9, are also now in the process of being converted to ultra low sulfur diesel. So this 41 megawatt reserve unit would consume and burn ultra low sulfur diesel at less than 10% of the existing PD plant's consumption. That plant will be permitted by US EPA, by Guam EPA, ensuring compliance with ambient air quality standards. I think you should also consider in GPA's presentation, they've stated that because all the plants now are being changed to ultra low sulfur diesel, that this is going to result in a system-wide improvement of 1,859 times reduction in the SO2, the sulfur emissions under the US EPA air quality standards. So the standards have tightened quite a bit. GPA has been doing a lot. At the PUC, we've entertained a lot of petitions to allow them to change the fuel burning in the PD plants. We went through this with all the combustion turbines. They've already been changed to the low sulfur. And this is a process that's going to continue, which will ensure that the 41 megawatt plant built in Cabras won't cause harm to the students. Now, I'd also note, I'm sure you're aware that the PD Municipal Planning Council has voted to support this measure, Bill 212. They are the representatives of PD Village, and they have found that they approve the exemption, that they are not concerned that the building of this plant is going to cause harm to the school or its students. And again, I suggest there's just nothing before you in the record. We've had a lot of general talk about climate change and the environment and the evils of fossil fuels, but we haven't had anything concrete to show what is the potential actual harm or damage here. And all the facts and evidence seem to suggest that this plant, the 41 megawatt, can be built without harm. It's being built in a careful, cautious way, reducing the fuel that it's using. So for all of those reasons, it seems very appropriate for the senators to approve the exemption here. As I said, if you don't, I truly believe it's going to be catastrophic. It'll mean in upcoming years, if somehow that led to the derailment of the Ukadu plant, there will not be sufficient power. Renewables will not operate as effectively. And we may well face a situation that existed in the 1990s of blackouts, rolling outages, and the like. But GPA has been working hard to make sure that's a power system that will protect the people of Guam in reliability. And also, by the way, they have been taking a lot of steps to reduce the cost. So part of the need for the Ukadu power plant is that when it is operational, you will see a great impact on LEAC because that plant is so much more efficient in fuel burning. It's going to reduce LEAC. There will be a greatly reduced amount of fuel consumption for all the power plants, Ukadu as well as the others, the combustion turbines, because of the use of the ultra low sulfur diesel. So if somehow this program did not go through, again, costs could go up. It really would not present a good situation for the people of Guam. So in conclusion, Chairman Montanola has supported this Bill 212. He urges that the senators of this committee approve its passage and also that the legislature enact the legislation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harecki. Just for the record, was your testimony ratified by the entire Public Utilities Commission?
It was presented to the entire Public Utilities Commission, yes.
But was it ratified or approved by them to represent the entire commission?
Yes, yes, I sent it to them and the commissioners all had an opportunity to object. There was one objection out of 7 commissioners.
Okay, so then there was one objection. It wasn't completely ratified. I mean, did they vote on it in a meeting and say this will represent the commission?
That's not our procedure at the commission. These hearings come up very quickly. So normally we do always notify all of the commissioners, and if they have any objection to the testimony, they will voice that. And that is always in this context how we have processed these.
So, but you did say there was one objection on the commission to this testimony? So one
It
member
wasn't really an objection to the testimony so much. It was a concern about the 41 megawatt plant, but that commissioner, in fact, had voted to change the energy conversion agreement to approve the 41 megawatt plant. The written order that I submitted, again, shows that all the commissioners were there, including this one that now raised that objection. So he's already approved the 41 megawatt plant.
Okay, so technically speaking, who is your testimony on behalf of the entire commission or on behalf of?
I say
Yes.
change up some diapers.
Sorry, someone's microphone is on. Please mute your microphone. Thank you. Because you were
Yes,
mentioning
it's on behalf of
chairman,
the entire PUC, yes.
but not, your process is to not vote on ratification of specific testimony.
No, we don't do that.
Interesting process. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Harecki. Next, we'll have Mr. Benavente, General Manager of the Guam Power Authority.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator. Good morning, all the senators that are in the public hearing. And I'd like to start out, first of all, by thanking Senator San Agustin for introducing the bills that are before you today. I'd like to also thank you for this opportunity for this public hearing to relay as it relates to 213 and furthermore in the next bill 212. My name is John Benavente, General Manager of the Guam Power Authority, and I am pleased to offer GPA's testimony in support of Bill 213-36 as introduced. If passed, Bill 213-36 will allow the Guam Power Authority to proceed with critical energy projects that will substantially improve air quality, lower rates, and increase power service reliability, all positively impacting our island community, but especially all who live and or work within the PD community. Through several meetings, GPA engaged in discussions with the PD Municipal Planning Council and residents of PD, the Port Authority of Guam Management, the leadership team of Jose Rios Middle School and its PTA, and with local media partners. We have carefully considered the comments and suggestions raised at this meeting, which have improved and strengthened our clean energy plan. The contract for the Okudu Power Plant includes reserve generators that may be used during system maintenance of the permanent units or as otherwise required by GPA. These reserve generators totaling 41 megawatt are planned for installation near GPA's existing tank farm between the entrances of the Port Authority of Guam and Polaris Point. The proximity of major transmission lines, existing fuel infrastructure, and other factors conclude that lots 261 and 257 are the best and most feasible location for these reserve units. The location, however, is within the 1,000 feet from Jose Rios Middle School, which indicates potential conflict with Public Law 22-23. The proposed lots to site these reserve units are located within an area originally designated for power generation and related use. In fact, the Department of Land Management finds that the subject lots in Cabras were transferred to GPA by the U.S. Navy as unzoned federal property specifically for power plant use by GPA. The principal financial lenders of Guam Okudu Power, who is contracted to build and operate the new Okudu Power Plant and related components, including reserve power units, are concerned about the conflict of Public Law 22-23 has with the specified permitted activities of the Cabras slots. GP is required to remedy the conflict, which brings us to the issue at hand. Public Law 22-23 restricts the construction of power generation facilities with capacity in excess of 1 megawatt and utilizing fossil fuel within 1,500 feet of a school. Testimony in support of Public Law 22-23 passed in 1993 cited the poor air quality surrounding Harmon Loop Elementary, known as 1M Guerrero Elementary School, attributed to the Machechi power plant operation. The Machechi plant stack height was subsequently raised from about 45 feet to the existing 150 feet, immediately mitigating the impact to the area community. Additionally, the sulfur content of fuel oil was reduced from 0.6 to the 2.0015 it is today. Machechi and other diesel plants considerably improving air quality and reducing overall emissions. The Machechi power plant operates today, generally unnoticed by the Guam 1M Guerrero Elementary School community and numerous patrons of the Deredu Sports Complex. The subject lots are between 1,000 to 1,500 feet of Sirius Middle School, as are the existing baseload plants, PD Units 8 and 9, as was mentioned by Mr. Recchi earlier. Under current operations, Units 8 and 9 generate over 644 million kilowatt hours annually, burning high and low sulfur residual fuel oil containing up to 2% sulfur. They burn close to 1 million barrels a year of 2% sulfur. The school's potential impact from power plant emissions occurred less than 3% of plant operations over the past 5 years. 3% of plant operations is really 3% when the trade winds are turned inland. Several projects are on the way to convert existing baseload units PD8 and 9 to ultra-low sulfur diesel. The same fuel the Machechi and other non-baseload generators use today, and fuel which the 41 megawatt backup generators will use. The siting of the 41 megawatt reserve units and related power plant activities will impact the PD school and village. The positive impact will be realized in six short months when PD units 8 and 9 start out utilizing ultra-low sulfur diesel with a sulfur content of 0.0015% versus the 2% that's used today. This is the same diesel available at your neighborhood gas station that powers trucks and buses, school buses, and all other power plants except for Cabras 1 and 2. Although Cabras 1 and 2 are slated for permanent retirement shortly after the commissioning of the new Okudu power plant, it will transition from heavy oil with 2% today to cleaner oil of 0.2% sulfur content by the end of this year. December 2022, we have to be burning 0.2% sulfur content at Cabras. By 2025, the current baseload plant will either have been retired or transitioned to reserve units. By 2025, the sulfur dioxide emission will be 0.05%, not even 1%, 0.05% of the 2019 rate, exceeding the national ambient air quality standards. The air will be 1,894 times cleaner than today. The Cabras air quality will be improved by 99.6%. A substantial transformation after 50 years of burning cheap but high sulfur fuel content. GP is making significant progress to ensure clean, reliable, affordable, resilient energy for Guam. Transitioning to cleaner, greener, and renewable energy requires confidence that the non-traditional energy sources can provide energy security, self-sufficiency, and system stability. Long-term planning is critical to ensuring that Guam's energy infrastructure has the capacity, flexibility, resilience, and the capacity to adapt and deliver. By 2025, the new Okudo plan will provide the island's primary baseload energy, reducing Guam's annual fossil fuel import by 49 million gallons. The existing conventional baseload power plant will be retired or placed on reserve status and will operate on cleaner fuel. Concurrently, utility-scale renewable energy farms and energy storage battery system will be commissioned, generating over 38% of the island's power by 2026. Guam's ratepayers will save approximately 25% in current energy costs to receive cleaner, more resilient, and reliable energy. The main Okudo plant will be constructed in Dedero and will have the capacity to generate over 198 megawatts. This new, most efficient plant will provide Guam's primary baseload energy, in addition to the over 165 megawatt current and pending utility scale and rooftop solar PV systems. The 41 megawatt units are a component of the new power plant and serve as backup or reserve generation capacity. And the Okudo plant is the cornerstone to achieving and ensuring the island's security. The Okudo plant project includes the 41 megawatt reserve units proposed to be sited in the Cabras area, is a key component of the negotiated consent decree between GPA, US EPA, and the US Department of Justice. Transitioning to clean fuel, adding additional utility-scale renewable plants, and energy battery storage systems are also critical components of the consent decree and advance the island's energy security. By 2025, 25% of the energy delivered to your homes, schools, businesses, and community centers will come from renewable sources. This will be in large part from the large utility-scale PV plants coming online beginning this year and throughout the next few years. Over 180 megawatt renewable energy will be added to the current 25 megawatt utility-scale PV farm and about 25 to 28 megawatts of customer rooftop sources. Transitioning to clean fuel present unique infrastructure, supply, and logistical challenges. The solution includes concurrently using up to 5 different types of fuel over the next few years. But by late 2024, all power plants, including base loads and reserve units, will be utilizing one single fuel, ultra-low sulfur diesel of 0.0015%, reducing our emissions again in Cabras and the whole island really by 1,859 times, providing us 0.4% improvement in our air quality. While cleaner fuel is more expensive, the generating units of the new power plant are extremely efficient and are able to produce more energy with less fuel. Lower fuel requirements coupled with affordable utility-scale renewable energy and battery storage will result in lower fuel costs and ultimately lower power bills. The 2022 Integrated Resource Plan, currently before the CCU for approval, recommends adding about 400 megawatts of solar renewables by 2030, thus achieving our 50% renewable goal 5 years earlier than the mandated deadline of 2035. However, as identified by the plan, the Okudo Power Plant and its reserve unit is critical to achieving this goal, the mandated goal that was passed by the Guam legislature. We cannot achieve clean, reliable, affordable power and comply with the consent decree by utilizing existing power plants that were commissioned in the 1970s. Those plants have served the island well over the past 47 years. The plants are no longer capable of keeping up with the intermittency of modern renewable power generation or meet today's environmental and efficiency standards. The path to clean, reliable, resilient, affordable energy has been paved. The planning for new power plant began over a decade ago. We must stay the course and keep moving forward. Further delays jeopardize compliance with the consent decree as well as availability of sufficient power generation for Guam. Our current nameplate power generation capacity is 420 megawatts. However, the derated capacity today is about 358 megawatts for current peak demand required by our customers about 257 megawatts last year, leaving our reserve at only 101 megawatts. This is not technical gibberish. These figures show the vulnerability of our power generation capacity. In plain language, if we do nothing, if we fail to commission the new power plant, Guam will not have sufficient energy to meet the demand. We continue to progress forward to avoid possible federal court receivership, rotating blackouts, higher rates, and disinterested investors. Your express authorization to construct and operate research generators on the Cabras lots will remedy a small but critical component and move us toward achieving energy security. The Guam Power Authority needs your help. We cannot do this alone. Por favor, ayuda para iminalik todo kita Guam. Jesus Mercy for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beneventi, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in list is Mr. Rick Unpinko.
Good morning, Senator Ridgell. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm a power consultant and also consultant for cellular phones, retired GPA general manager many years ago. I am in support of Bill 213-36 for the following. I understand the concerns of parents of students attending, say, Rios Middle School, and that the 41 megawatt generator is within 1,500 feet radius of the school. But so is the existing baseload plants that have operated there since late 1990s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not heard any claims resulting from the close proximity of the power plant. Furthermore, by the time this power plant is built, the baseload units in Cabras will be retrofitted to the new ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel, which is multiple times cleaner than the existing bunker fuel that we are personally using. Thus, the clean air safety standards will conform to the US EPA. In my own opinion, as a power consultant, it is safe for the students at, say, Rios Middle School and the people working in the vicinity. The 41 megawatt power plant is a reserve generator that has minimal operational time, and if needed, may be used to shave off peak loadings during the day. It is not intended to be operated continuously, but only as a standby generator should an unexpected loss of load incident occurs. The plant can also be placed online during scheduled outages of other generators undergoing maintenance. And that's the most important part, is that we're always maintaining the other generators. We need this 41 megawatts for as reserve. It is also critical for integrating more renewables in the island-wide power system. This plant can go online within a matter of minutes, And this plant will be useful for cushioning power fluctuations resulting from adverse weather conditions that may affect the solar farms. A cloud covering the solar farm, a 60 megawatt solar farm, can lose in a matter of seconds about 4 megawatts. And we need a power plant like this to ramp up and compensate for that load, because 4 megawatts is about the size of Aston Village. And so operationally, we need this for our power system. GPA needs this generator to be situated in the south due to the power infrastructure already available. The switch yards are there, pipelines are there for the daytime, for the day tanks, and for the fuel supply, which is close by. But also the important part is that not only is this an advantage for the permitting, which will cut down 18 months of permitting time, but also to serve the southern villages during power interruptions and system disturbances. The 41 megawatt will strengthen the southern villages' reliability and lessen line losses to the south. In the event of an island-wide blackout or during typhoon restoration, this 41 megawatt generator will serve as a black start to power the baseload generators in Cabras and also to serve the residents of the South. In closing, I am asking the legislature to pass Bill number 213-36. We do not want the old adage that the South is the last to rise after typhoons, as we experienced decades ago. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Pinco. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Victor Torres, Engineer 3, Guam Power Authority.
Buenas, Senator Clynton Ridgell and all committee members here today. My name is Victor Torres, Mechanical Engineer at Guam Power Authority. I have been with the agency since 2013 and have a background in power generation, demand-side management, and renewable energy. It is an honor to speak to you all today in support of Bill 213. This bill supports GPA's Clean Energy Master Plan and will reduce our customers' power bills, increase reliability, and protect the environment. Bill 213 allows GPA to install 41 megawatts of reserve generators, part of the Ukudu power plant, near GPA's existing fuel tank farm. As reserve generators, these units will only operate on an as-needed basis, further reducing emissions in the area. To restate, these will not operate as baseload generators, which run 24/7. When these generators are needed, they will run on ultra-low sulfur diesel. This is an incredibly clean fuel source, especially when compared to what is currently used at our aging power plants in PD. Installing these units will better allow GPA to retire our 47-year-old steam turbine generators. Again, this leads to substantial decrease of emissions in the area, greatly benefiting students of Jose Rios. When starting my career at GPA, I was assigned to oversee several major maintenance programs at Cabras 1 and 2. The amount of work needed to keep those units above water was incredible. And that was over 8 years ago. While efficient in their prime, time has taken its toll. Reduced reliability and ever-increasing maintenance costs make operating these legacy plants far into the future unfeasible and unsustainable. Construction of the new Ukudu plant with its reserve generators will directly result in an efficient, cleaner, and greener Guam. We have an opportunity to ensure the future of power generation on island. The reduced emissions from ultra-low sulfur diesel plants with potential to run on natural gas means a Guam with cleaner air to breathe. Additionally, our customers can enjoy substantially lower power bills due to savings resulting from refinancing of bonds and almost $80 million in annual fuel savings. I not only speak in the capacity of a GPA engineer, but as a resident of Guam and a ratepayer. Bill 213 will benefit our families, the next generation of Chamorro, and all people of Guam. I strongly support this bill. Situus Maasi.
Thank you, Mr. Torres, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Ronald Okada. Hello, Mr. Okada, are you there?
Go ahead, I'm here. Can you hear me? Sir, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good morning, Committee Chairman Ridgell, committee members and senators of the 36th Guam Legislature. My name is Ronald Okada. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify in support of Bill 213. I'm asking for your consideration in voting yes for both for this piece of legislation. I've been with the authority for 25 years and currently serve as the manager of generation. I manage a group of dedicated people who work tirelessly at the old and declining power plant. Senator, I can tell you firsthand that this plant needs to be retired and replaced. They are too expensive to continue to maintain, and the new power plant, which are part of JP's master plan, will burn lower emission, which means cleaner air for your family and mine. With fuel saving alone, GPA will be saving approximately $80 million annually. These savings will be passed on to ratepayers in the form of lower power bill. With fuel saving alone, Chairman Real, I must emphasize that we can and should not wait any longer to implement our master plan. This bill will help accelerate that. Lastly, I don't want to go back to the old time during the 1990s where the load shedding was evident. So we don't plan to retire this unit and build the new power plant. Then we will go back to that old actual load shedding rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okada, for your testimony. Next is Lourdes San Nicolas.
Good morning and half a day, Madam Speaker Talahi, Chairman Ridgell, and members of the 36th Guam Legislature. Buenos and half a day. Thank you for allowing me to present both oral and written testimonies in full support of Bills 212 and 213. My name is Lourdes San Nicolas, a resident of the village of Derido. After reading Bills 212 and 213 and their benefits to us as ratepayers, I fully understand the importance of passing these two pieces of legislation that will lead to lower power bills, increase power reliability, and provide for a cleaner environment and quality air. Even before this awful pandemic, many of our families struggled to make ends meet. Now, with many of our residents unemployed and displaced by COVID, rising utility costs add to our challenges. Additionally, our children are the youngest victims of this pandemic. Many of them miss class time and social interaction with their schoolmates. Some students attending virtually online have to deal with shoddy internet connections and power outages. We all know this is unacceptable. Honorable Senators, I respectfully request your full support on Bills 212 and 213. The rates are available now for GPA to refinance their bonds, save money, and pass on to those savings to ratepayers may not be this low again. Retiring those old Cabras power plants and replacing them with a new, more reliable and efficient power system that burns almost 99% less emissions will also be possible if these bills pass into law. Thank you again for your time and attention, and I look forward to a favorable result.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholas. Next is Mr. Kenneth Chargaloff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Madam Speaker and members of the 36th Guam Legislature, buenas and half a day. Thank you for allowing me to present both oral and written testimonies in full support of Bills 212 and 213. My name is Ken Chargla from the historic village of Inalahan and currently a resident of the village of Jonia. As we all know, the passage of Bill 212 will give us the ratepayers substantial savings of approximately 15 million beginning 2024 through 2030 and improve power services in the immediate future. In other words, we, the ratepayers, will see substantial lower power bills than today's rates. Additionally, the passage of 213 will allow GPA to substantially provide reliable, resilient, clean energy, cost-effective, lower power rates and meet current and future energy growth needs. The 41 megawatts reserve unit of PD will support the main power base unit at Okudu when the power system is interrupted. The bill is urgently needed to complete the Okudu plan by April 2024 to comply with the federal consent decree. As the former principal of PT Middle School, now Jose Rios Middle School, and associate superintendent of secondary education, and about 40 years in the Department of Education, no students, parents, teachers, staff, or community members has ever registered any concern about the plant proximity or the quality of air to me or with my office. I am grateful for the visionary leadership of the CCU and the Guam Power Authority leadership and its team of professionals in their commitment to replacing antiquated, unreliable power campus with the new technology power system to an improved PD and Okudu power plant. The island's power system will be more efficient, reliable, affordable, and cleaner. Any delays in meeting the federal consent agreement will result in hundreds of millions in potential penalties. Gulf Guam nor the ratepayers cannot be further financially burdened with this foreseeable matter. Moreover, let us be mindful of our geographic distance, noting that we cannot tap onto other energy grids. We are it. Honorable Senators, I am counting on your wisdom to guide us from any immediate or future cataclysmic events, such as load shedding or island-wide power outages. In closing, as ratepayers, I respectfully request your serious consideration to support both Bills 212 and 213 after your careful and thoughtful review of the endless benefits of these two proposed pieces of legislation. Indeed, I am very excited to see the fruition of the new power system technology. It is a huge win for the people of Guam. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing the passage of these bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chargaloff, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is former Speaker Judy Wampat. Hello, Speaker Wampat, are you still online? Sorry, there are a lot of people logged on right now, so I'm trying to see who is still online, and I know some people may have left for other things or may have dropped off. Okay, I don't see Speaker Wampat online at this time, so I'll move on now. The next person signed up is Mr. Tony Chargaloff, Mayor of Inalahan.
Half a day, Honorable Senator Clynton Ridgell, Chairperson of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power, and Energy Utilities and the Arts, and all honorable senators of the 36th Guam Legislature. Undangku na sidus masi for this opportunity to provide my testimony in full support of Bill 212-36 and Bill 213-36. My name is Anthony P. Chargloff, a resident of Binalan for over 54 years and the current mayor of our historic village. In recent months, the village of Binalahan and several other southern villages have been experiencing power outages twice a week and sometimes more than that. When this happens, my staff will promptly communicate with GPA on the status of the power interruption. I commend the Guam Power Authority for their prompt response and action to address the power interruption in the southern villages to restore and bring us back on the grid at the earliest possible. As a former utility employee myself, I understand the challenges with trying to provide the expected service with an aging infrastructure at a cost that is going beyond the means of the median income family. I support Bill 212-36 because it will allow GPA to take advantage of historic low interest rates, translating into $15.3 million of cash savings, which converts into savings for the ratepayers starting from 2024 to 2030. I also strongly support Bill 213-36, which will allow the Guam Power Authority to construct a 41 megawatt generator reserve and proceed with critical energy projects that will translate into increased power reliability, improved air quality, and definitely lower rates. Our entire island community, especially the southern villages, will be receptive to this plan. I want to thank GPA's General Manager, John Beneventi, and his management team, including the board, CCU board, for their foresight in planning our power infrastructure and ensuring that our island needs will be met as our demand increases. I am highly encouraged at the wisdom of GPA to create a plan to address our community needs, especially for the southern villages, for a reliable, more efficient, affordable, and cleaner environment power system. In closing, I would like to thank each of you, honorable senators, for this opportunity to expressly support Bills 212 and 213. More importantly, I ask for your support and ultimate approval of passage of these two bills. Most importantly, for the southern villages of Guam, thank you very much, and Dunklu na sidus masi.
Thank you, Mayor Chargaloff. Next is Mr. Eloy Hara. Mr. Hara, if you could please unmute. There you go. One more time. Click it again, and you just had it. There you go. Mr. Hara, it's on mute again. Please just, you had it off mute. There, it is off mute right now. It's back on mute. There, it's off mute. If you just speak now, we should be able to hear you.
Okay, can you hear
Yes,
me
sir.
now?
There you go.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
very
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to testify on both Bill 21336 and 21236. And I am in full support of both bills. And to actually shorten my time here, using Senator the San Agustin testimony, and more especially the PUC with Attorney Regis, rather than repeat all of those long and testimony. Let me just first more or less. I am Eloy Hara, formerly a general manager of Guam Power. Back during the load setting blues. And then I, move on to be executive director of the Civil Service Commission and administrator of the Guam Memorial Hospital before my retirement, and then became a Consolidated Commission of Utility member. But prior to that, I was also a PUC member back during the days of Joey Drainus and Simon Sanchez. And so I do have an extensive background, and as a member of the Consolidated Commission of Utilities up to 2015, I am really a big part of putting the integrated resource plan that is now being, effected to arrive at the construction of the 198 megawatt power plant in Ukudu. So that, sir, is my background and, reason why I'm able to comment appropriately regarding these two bills. But so not to repeat, I'm going to just summarize now the basic, against the basic objections. The proximity of the PD power plant, school, and neighborhood is the very reason for the 198 megawatt plan up at Ukudu. And the reason for that is because the total megawatt in the entire Cabras area is 220 megawatt. Now, the 198 megawatt in Ukudu will replace that 220 non-efficient, highly, highly corrosive emission power plants will be replaced by the 198 megawatt power plant. And of course, the 41 megawatt that is out of that 198 will, they found out is most feasible to be constructed in the Cabras area for the many reasons, such as the proximity of the tapping into the power source, into the fuel line, and in also the disbursement of the power by that unit will be supplying most effectively the southern community of Guam. So that, sir, is the very reason why the 198 megawatt power plant is the reason. The other one also is that the without the 198 megawatt power plant, we cannot effectively use the over 180 megawatt of solar power that is going to be online this year. So not being able to tap into the 180 megawatt of solar power in itself would be disastrous. But the positive part about it is that by tapping into the 180 megawatt of solar to support the 198 megawatt efficient units, will result in a substantial savings to the entire community of Guam. And I believe that translates to almost about $80 million a year. So and that again, and not only is it a substantial saving, but the total emission, of replacing the 220 bad generators by the 198 megawatt and the 180 megawatt of solar will substantially really have a very clean environment and a very much lower power cost. So basically, one other factor too that I believe has not been risen other than by John Beneventi's general manager is that the 41 megawatt in Cabras and the remaining 7, 8, and 9 units are only going to be online when needed. But another factor that most people have not indicated is that the prevailing wind in Guam, the prevailing wind other than during inclement weather such as typhoon, is that the prevailing wind is away from Cabras Island out into the Philippine Sea. And only during like typhoon time, when the prevailing wind will shift back onto the island of Guam. So during my days in Guam Power as the PUC and CCU member, when the wind blows back onto the island, that's when we shift to low sulfur fuel at that time. But now with low sulfur fuel being used, super low sulfur fuel being used all the time, that would not even be necessary to shift fuel during those times when the wind blows back onto PD and the rest of the island. So that's another benefit for for approving Bill 21336. So that is in closing, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to testify. And I also ask all of the members of the 36th legislature to please, support this bill because it's in the best interest of our entire community of Guam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hara, for your testimony. Next on the list is Mr. Kyle Dahilik.
Half a day, Inan Husi Kyle Dahilig. I am representing Guam Youth Climate Strike and myself. Sidus Maasi, Chairman, Senators, and students for sharing your time with me today. I don't trust Guam Power Authority, Korea Electric and their subsidiaries, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and the Public Utilities Commission. Back in 1993, Public Law 2233 was passed with near unanimous support by the legislature, 14 out of 15 with one being absent. Students, teachers, and staff expressed great concerns about air quality and safety. And what was relevant back in 1993 reverberates today. Also noteworthy that late Senator Joseph Agustin and former Senator Ted Nelson voted in favor of keeping fossil fuels away from learning institutions. A yes vote on Bill 213 will dictate the legislature's environmental legacy. I also don't understand what's clean about diesel fuel and burning because it is quite dangerous with its volatility and how that would impact public health and public safety. This new energy, clean new energy that's being promised, it's new and it's crazy and something that we don't know too much about. And given that this dangerous and new dirty energy will be handled by KEPCO and its company friends and their history with explosions like in Cabras, this should be enough red flags to indicate that this dangerous energy plant is a disaster waiting to explode. And when is this fear mongering going to stop to the people, to the community, to the youth, that this energy being burned is going to be clean and that somehow rates are going to decrease? How can we take serious that KEPCO and their friends who are in court for violations and mismanagement of other projects like at Marble Cave. I also want to note that prior testimonies of those who are lobbying for this bill suggest that there isn't harm when fossil fuel power plants are built near schools. So why not place them near Guam Power Authority within 1,200 feet of the entrance, or the CCU's homes, the workplaces, and whatnot? Why do we have to have these dangerous power plants situated at Uguru, at Jose Rios, at Juanem Guerrero? And let's talk a little bit about the age demographic present today. Who will be here in the next 25 years to suffer the consequences by decisions made today? When we hear from industry experts and their claims that refinancing will save us money, who is actually saving the money? Because rates have consistently gone up since last election season. With inflation at an all-time high, with wallet-breaking records at 7%, even as high as 12% for basic household products, not even to mention gas prices at $5. And this also includes that the feds are expecting to raise interest rates. So who here has the actual power to prove that our bills will decrease? And if you're asking for alternatives, you already have the answers. We need this legislature to reintroduce Bill 21935, which would allow public, charter, and collegiate institutions to serve as properties eligible for installation of solar panels to aid in attaining a lower cost for cleaner electricity production and to provide strengthened legislation to purchase of lease-back renewable energy. These are words from your bill that you introduced. And so, in conclusion, voting in favor of both bills today is negligent and a complete reversal of the protections for our people that was promised back in 1993. Undangkalun na Sidus Masi, maraming salamat po, and kiniso.
Thank you, Mr. Dahilig, for your testimony. Next is Kalani Regis.
Good day. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good day and good morning, legislature, senadors and senadoras, other students and other people of Guam who are here today. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak today on this very important issue. And from listening to what everyone here has presented so far, including those different presentations given by the GPA director and other folks who are school administrators, I understand that you are all in a very difficult position to make such a very big decision. I, for one, as a ratepayer of Guam, as somebody who has lived here for over 10 years, do not support this bill. And I urge you to look into alternatives. I understand that because of the consent decree and other issues that Mr. Victor Torres also pointed out, and other people, that this kind of sulfur diesel fuel is more better than what we are currently using on Guam. And I understand that that is an alternative. However, sulfur diesel does give off emissions. It does produce byproducts. Even low sulfur diesel with less than 0.5% sulfur gives off byproducts. And because of that, I can't support having a sulfur diesel plant near a school. And although everyone or other people have pointed out that there is no science showing how detrimental having a fossil fuel burning power plant near a school is, there is actually science showing how detrimental fossil fuel burning power plants are. And there are recent studies published about it as recently as 2021 in the journal called Environmental Health Perspectives. And Dispensa, Science Direct, from the journal Science Direct, talking about sulfur dioxide emissions and how they give off other byproducts. And then also pointing out that fuel plants that utilize sulfur dioxide emissions also would need to, the best way to control the emissions would be to remove the sulfur from the fuel before use. And so they would have to have a sulfur capture system. And I am unsure of whether this current plant has a sulfur capture system, but sulfur capture systems such as fuel scrubbing towers do add cost to the ratepayers. And although that might be something that saves us money in the short term, over the long term, the health effects of it on these kids' health and the people of this village are unstudied. And like everyone pointed out before, people haven't reported any detrimental issues to other school administrators. And that's understandable because people don't really know necessarily, whether what they're getting, diabetes, asthma, is from the sulfur, the power plant down the street. You don't always know. It's not as clear cut as, like, for example, Malesu, when the people were getting poisoned from the PCBs in the lagoon and getting high rates of cancer. It's not that clear cut all the time. Something that is airborne is very difficult to pin down, and we all know that because of COVID. So I just urge you, although that I understand that you senadores and senadoras CIHA are in a difficult position, I also urge you to look into other ways we could improve GPA's power grid system to be more environmentally friendly, to include other perspectives besides people who are from families that have profited off of power plants and fuel, and also to include perspectives from people who are living in those villages as well. And so make a little bit more of an effort to include those perspectives, as opposed to, printing out 2 weeks before the hearing and then the week before, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for other people telling me about this. And PUC, another thought that I was having when I was listening to Mr. Frederick Horeki's piece today is that this, if anything, shows us that PUC's system of approval does not capture public opinion in the way that it should. And I think that that should be also a consideration moving forward on how best to improve it so that it is not in the hands of 7 or 8 people, although, we are doing the best we can with what we have. So I just think that for me as a ratepayer, I do not support this. I urge you to look into another system for providing power to the people of Guam, including myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kalani Regis, for your testimony today. Next is Mrs. Maria Hernandez May, Perte Letexan. Hello, please unmute. You're still on mute.
I'm sorry about that.
There you go.
Buenas and half a day, honorable senators. Thank you so much for holding this very important public hearing. I have my kids behind me, so there might be a little chaos, but I'm going to try to get through this quickly. I'm a mother, daughter of Guahan, born and raised here. I'm speaking today on behalf of Perte Texan Save Ratidian. We are a direct action environmental and cultural rights organization, and we advocate for the protection of sacred native land and for the return of ancestral lands. Over the years, our organization has continually raised concerns about the harmful effects of military development in northern Guahan that is causing irreversible damage to our historic resources and to our environment. So while our mission has been focused on DoD projects that lie above our sole source aquifer, we believe that the same pressure must also be placed on our own government to utilize environmentally sound and culturally sensitive practices outside of the fence to prevent irreparable harm to our island and people. For this reason, we vehemently oppose Bill 213-36. And there are a myriad of ways, as you've heard from those in opposition, that the establishment of this power plant is not in the best interest of the people of Guam. And we need to be thinking about paving the way for a sustainable present and future with a focus on real, genuine security, especially in these uncertain times. Being dependent on dirty energy for the next 3 decades goes against that goal. There's no genuine security in toxic emissions linked to asthma, heart problems, chronic illness, especially in the vicinity of a school. And while previous testimony indicated that the community hasn't shared concern about these emissions, the reality is that there aren't any educational campaigns to inform the community about risks and benefits. And I'm sure if the community were properly informed, you would see a lot more parents here today objecting. We also share concerns about KEPCO's history of ethical violations and unsound business practices. It makes no logical sense to place a company with a questionable track record managing over 50% of the island's power. Our people's health continues to decline. Our lands and water are increasingly contaminated. Diesel emissions contribute to the development of cancer, cardiovascular and respiratory health issues, pollution of air, water, and soil. This is scientifically proven. We have the CCU saying that it doesn't, but there's extensive data to show that it does cause harm. So we're being told that not moving forward with this power plant because existing ones need support. That's kind of the argument here. And we're saying that moving forward with this legislation would mean that we're taking 10 steps back to move 3 steps forward. And so we are very, very concerned about this. The health of our land really is reflective of the health of our people. So why would our community support adding more toxicity to our home? Dirty energy is not the way forward. So we urge you, our elected leaders, to oppose Bill 213-36 for a cleaner, greener, and healthier future for Guam. Situs Masi.
Thank you, Ms. Maria Hernandez-May, for your testimony. Next on the list is Ms. Luisa Kabuhatt. Forgive me if I did not pronounce your name correctly.
Senator Clynton Ridgell, it's Luisa Kabuhatt for the record.
Luisa Kabuhatt.
Yes, so my name is Luisa Kabuhatt. I'm here today as a person who was born and raised on the island of Guam, and also really concerned about my generation's future, right? Like, I'm here because I want to live on a Guam where my generation and the generation that come after me have clean air to breathe, just like you did, right? Can live and go to school and learn with clean air and clean water, right? These issues are all connected, poisoning our water and poisoning our air so that so we could get ready for the military buildup. What is that saying to our children? What is that saying to my generation and the generation after, right? So I ask that instead that you make this moment to find the courage to choose people, to choose our health, to choose our community, who unfortunately cannot be here today. It's Thursday at 9 a.m. in the morning, right? Parents and students go to school so that they could pay their power bills. My grandma, she pays $600 to $700 a month. She turned 90 this year, 90. And I bless every single year that she's made it, but she cannot keep up with these energy bills, right? And GPA, they've increased our energy bills 2 years during a global pandemic when people were out of jobs. How can we trust them to be in the interest of our people? And so it is your duty as our legislators to make sure that you hear what the voters want, right? Not what these corporations are asking, like KEPCO or GPA, right? They say that it's greener, it's reliable. This is greenwashing. This is information that they are feeding you, but we don't have that independent information, right? All we can rely on is on the science that says diesel is a fossil fuel that maybe, yeah, emits 0.00015, but you are our legislators, right? You can create a feasibility study so that we can understand what are the effects of this. And so we were taught to take care of our elders. We were taught to take care of the generations that come after us. And you holding the power have to make that commitment. You know, this energy transition in the years that come to provide the opportunity for jobs for us to work in safe, renewable infrastructure, we can do that. I ask that you delay by opposing this exemption, right? Because a yes on this bill, 213, will directly pollute our people. They say it's cleaner, it will still pollute the air. Fossil fuels is a fossil fuel. So this will take away from spending that can improve our lives rather than shorten them. This will be a large sunk cost with no return on investment in a renewable future for my generation and the generation that comes after me. And it will exacerbate the problem of climate change that we are facing. So I refuse that our politicians say, like, we have to make a better energy grid so that we could prepare for the military to come. What about our children? Because we live here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kabuhatt, for your testimony this morning. Next on the list is Luisa Kabuhatt.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. My name is Luisa Kabuhatt. I am a realtor in profession, and most especially, I am a concerned citizen, and I am attending this hearing to urge our honorable senators to please vote no on Bill 21336. This bill will give a special pass for GPA and KEPCO to build a power plant within 1,200 feet of Oserios Middle School. This facility will create toxic environment for the children of Oserios and the surrounding area. So please keep our children's safety and healthy. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Kabuhatt, for your testimony.
Thank you.
That is it for those who I have on my list right now. However, if there's anyone that I may have missed or anyone else who is here to testify on this bill, please turn on your camera, speak up. Let me know if there's anyone here to testify on the measure this morning. Anyone else? If there's anyone else here to testify, please unmute and speak up.
Dispensa, I would like to testify.
Okay. You may proceed.
Suzus Masi. Nahanu si Joni Leon Guerrero, Familian Dodu, Sombrero Zandicta. I'm a concerned Chamorro woman and a representative of Masakata Collective. I'm here today to ask that the 36 Guam legislature vote no against this bill, 213-36. I ask that the legislature take more time to review the federal consent agreement and vote against this bill. An outside impartial environmental and health impact investigation should be conducted, and the findings should be reported to the public so they can weigh in on the findings. Of course, the stakeholders here will tell you that this plan is necessary. Those who benefit from this plan, of course, will tell you that this plan is harmless and necessary. But how can GPA promise that the safety protocols will be sufficient in an event of unforeseen catastrophic weather events? All over the world, the best engineers in the world are failing to prepare for today's climate catastrophes. Regardless of the millions of dollars in penalty, cannot outweigh people and the land if they're lost to potential damages caused by this plant. We can't make decisions under duress. We can't make decisions because of millions of dollars. We have to consider people and our land first. And I ask that the legislature please consider the impacts of investing in more fossil fuel and not considering the outcomes for the future of our children. As Chamorros, it is our custom to honor and respect our elders. But I was also taught that as elders, it is our job to protect the Menhoben. The older ones always look out for the younger ones. I was also taught to respect the land and water. What values are we modeling if we are putting our youth at risk and setting them up to inherit a host of environmental and health impacts that could easily have been avoided? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Leon-Gro. Next, I have Antoinette Charfers McDaniel.
Buenas and hafede. Guahusi Professor Antoinette Charfers McDaniel. Smasagadzu Gitsa, Cleveland, Ohio. I was born in Hagatna. I and my siblings started school in Vergara, San Vicente. I am a sociologist by training, and I have taught many years about the impacts of environmental racism on low-income students of color.
Could you turn your camera on? It's one of the requirements of our public hearing. Thank you very much.
Very, very good. Again, Guahusi Professor Antoinette Charfers McDaniel, Familian Sumi, Zedze Zanderu. I am coming to you, I'm testifying from the lands of the Kaskaskia and Erie peoples in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a sociologist by training. For decades, I have taught about educational inequities facing students of color, Indigenous students, Black and Latinx students in Turtle Island. This is my first opportunity, however, to speak up on behalf of Imanhoben Zamoro. Zamoro-Dzu, and I'm very proud to be Chamorro. So in this instance, I would like to mention that in listening carefully, very carefully to the testimony in support of the passage of the approval of the bill, I heard time after time, quote unquote, evidence presented, evidence that people have not had chance to examine. I'd like to know whether, and I'd like to advance and support the recommendation by Sijoni Leon Guerrero, that the legislature please take the time to support a neutral and fund a neutral body to present evidence, because as a sociologist, I often teach students, there's evidence and then there's evidence. Many of the questions, or another line is, there's lies, damn lies, and there's statistics. It very much depends on who is in a position to present that evidence, to assume that all evidence is neutral and that only the evidence coming from institutions is legitimate and authoritative. I speak on behalf and in concert with the on-island activists, the Micronesian climate change folks, the Putei Litetsan, the activists who are mothers, who are activists, who are daughters and sons of Guahan, who are longtime residents. And I ask you to think carefully about the impacts of what sociologists refer to as environmental racism on the middle school children, but also the hardworking teachers, the educators, the parents, the staff. When there are disasters, as there are, as disasters are by definition accidents, everyone wrings their hands and says, and goes back and says, how could this awful, awful loss of life be avoided? It is incumbent upon the elected officials in the Guahan legislature, and I would say many of whom are Itzelu, Imanielu, Dzu. I'm asking you to please take the time to slow your roll. Do not give in to pressures from people who stand to benefit from the quick passage of this legislation, particularly when there is a sense, there's a kind of condescending, patronizing tone to many of the pieces, much of the testimony, that we know better. As Indigenous Chamorro people, as parents, ultimately, we are tired of this long lament that all people who have degrees and are employed by institutions always know better. There's a long line of bodies of Chamorro people and people who are continue to be ill from environmental issues and lack access to good healthcare on the island, who were told that too. Going back to Imañainahu, y Difunto, Si Jesus, and Victoria Sapfrus. My mother graduated from GW. My father is a Father Dueñas graduate. These are people who lived on that island, who lived through the war, and I am their descendant. And while I may be tuning in, as are Luisa Kabuhatt, and si Johnny Leon Guerrero, we are the descendants of Chamorros and longtime residents from Guam. Please listen and do not simply dismiss our voices, because we also have deep guinaidza para I Islata y Tanota. Situs Masi, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Ms. Sharpers, for your testimony this morning. Okay, one more time. Is there anyone else here that would like to provide testimony that I may have missed? Please speak now. I'm just looking around to see if anyone is here to also provide testimony. Again, please speak up now if you're here to provide testimony.
Hafaday, sorry, Senator is having some difficulties. He will be right back on. Thank you for your patience. Senator Ridgell should be signing in soon.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for bearing with me. I'm back on. I'm having technical difficulties with my Wi-Fi. Again, one more time, is anyone else here to provide testimony on Bill 213? Please speak up now. All right, if no one else is here to provide testimony on Bill 213, one more chance to speak up if I missed anyone. There's just a lot of people in the virtual room, so I just want to be sure I don't miss anyone who is here to provide testimony. Here's your last chance, or else we will proceed. Going once, going twice, sold. All right, so that concludes the testimony portion. We will now move on to the question and answer portion. I will begin with some questions I have. My question first is for the Guam Power Authority's General Manager, Mr. John Beneventi, if you are still on. And my question is, if the proponents are saying that this new technology is cleaner and it's safer and there should be no problem with putting it within 1,200 feet of the school, then why not just repeal the entire law and allow it for all schools?
Senator, that's a good question, and you can do that. However, all we're asking is for the PD side, and I think one could state that as we had noted in the past, this is really the last of the conventional fossil fuel firing generators that GPA is looking to ask for, and so therefore. As you can see, our plan is to achieve the mandate of renewable energy. I ask you to take a look at the 2022 Integrated Resource Plan, which is now before the CCU, and you will see that the Ukudu plan and the 41 megawatt reserves are cornerstone to achieve the mandate that you yourself correctly has put together for more renewables. You also see that the IRP has recommended 400 megawatts more of renewables within this decade. But as was also earlier mentioned by Attorney Recchi, we can't put any more megawatts of renewables into the system unless we change the conventional units. And of course, it's going to take a few years to, in any case, just as the mandate noted, to put renewables 50% by 2035, 100% by 2045. What do we do for energy between now and 2035 and now and 2045? The IRP that we proceeded and have completed and is before the CCU today identifies and laid out that plan for the next 10 to 20 years, and more importantly, to achieve 50% renewables by the end of 2030. It also identified about 230 million of infrastructure upgrades as necessary for more renewables to be in the system. So this plan, after done by the CCU, will be provided to the PUC. And they also will review it. And then our future actions, including going out for more renewables, which could be as early as this summer, will be based on the continuance of that and the expectation that the Ukudu power plant and its 41 megawatt will be completed as scheduled. So again, I'm not asking for all the other schools. We can take a look at that. But I am also saying at this point, though, that even Machechi, which has been running almost 50% of the time for the past several years, since 2015, when the 25 megawatt renewable came on, solar PV renewable in Dandan came on the line, because of the intermittency, we had to run that plan almost 50% of the time just to address that. It has been running next to JM Guerrero School with the clean fuel, with the higher stack, without any issues. And of course, it's safe. No? So I'm not asking for any exemption other than just for this particular. And again, from my looking out many, many years, from the IRP looking out, it's the last conventional fossil fuel plant that we are looking at, and that's what you call it. That's in the integrated resource plan. It does say that. It does say that we can retire other units, other more costlier units. So that's all in the integrated resource plan, as was mentioned, Senator. So all I ask is that we do the Cabras site for this, to accomplish the master plan.
Okay, Mr. Beneventi, but my question is, do you recommend amending the bill to just repeal the law altogether then?
Again, you can say that in a way. If you want to repeal the all the laws, it's fine. I think it's still safe. It's safe because Machechi is safe. And again, Senator, 0.0015% sulfur is almost negligible. No, I mean, it's not even 1%. So when you look at the mathematics of that, 0.0015% is very clean. And in any case, if we ever had to put again another power plant somewhere, of course, all of the concerns that were put forward today, we'll keep it. We'll make sure we address that, no? And we have addressed, because there are other parties, Senator, and again, that we have to be accountable to. We have to be accountable to the Guam EPA. We have to be accountable to the US EPA. And all the permitting, we can't just put the plan, even if you approve this, without them approving the permit, air permit for this unit. So again, there are other checkpoints other than the legislature. And whenever we go through that, we have to do modeling. We have to do a model of what the emissions are, so that we can comply with the ambient air quality standards. But one more thing, Senator, I think it maybe have been missed, but in this year, 2022, by July of this year, under the consent decree and with all the action we've been taking, that PD plan, which you see the haze in the presentation, is going to be burning clean ultra-low sulfur diesel. That haze is going to disappear. It's going to be clean already. Then by the end of December this year, we're going to burn 0.2% more expensive fuel at the Cabras power plant. And then now that the emission again is substantially much more improved than it is today. Those are all part of the presentation that I've shown you. Why is that? Because there's a new standard for the National Ambient Air Quality that's coming into effect in April 2023. And we couldn't get an extension of the new power plant beyond that unless we added the additional improvement until the new power plant is completed. So we have done that, Senator. The CCU, the PUC have approved all of that. And this part, we are constructing it. We are doing everything possible right now to meet that. So we will have much more cleaner air by the end of this year. And when we get to the new power plant completion, certainly you're going to see the 99% improvement of the whole island sulfur dioxide emission.
Okay, so just to be clear, you do recommend that we repeal the entire law, correct?
No, I did not say that, Senator. It's up to you. I'll leave it to your judgment.
So you don't, I'm trying to determine what is your recommendation. Are you recommending that we only grant an exemption just for this one school and do not repeal the entire thing? Or are you recommending that we repeal the entire law?
I'm asking you, the legislature, to allow us to operate at Cabras and provide us an exemption from that law. I will leave it to the
So you only recommend an exemption for Jose Rio
to decide whether they want to provide an exemption for the whole island. No? So that's my recommendation. That's my request, Senator.
Okay. All right. Also, there were some statements made today and representations that somehow this power plant is necessary to power the South. And I live down South, so I'm very concerned about the South. But why is it then that the initial contract was going to place all of the power generation at Ukadu?
Very good question, Senator. If you today, and again, the main reason why we one of the main reasons why we placed it up in Ukudu or requested to do it, and of course, it was a major improvement in the reliability of the system. especially storm restoration right into the underground system in the north, where 60% of the population lives. No? But in addition to that, as you can see, the other day, Tonga had a big volcano explosion. We had the west coast of the US having some tsunami impact from that, correct? So in planning together with the Homeland Security that look at potentially a huge earthquake in Alaska, in Japan, that could provide a tsunami impact into the Cabras area, we needed to have enough capacity in higher grounds to be able to ensure that despite a tsunami, we can continue to serve 100% of the island community. Well, that, Senator, is what 198 megawatt power plant, together with over 150 more megawatt of capacity above tsunami impact, will certainly serve the whole island. The standby generator, as you recall, as was said, is really to help to keep the load on at any particular time. So, but as a result of the opportunity to move that and make it be of value to the community, and using it at Cabras is a risk that we were willing to take, because again, the primary issue is, if there's a tsunami in Guam, can we serve the island community? With the new Okudu plan, the answer is yes. Because with the new Okudu plan, we are also storing 1 month's supply of fuel up at Okudu to attain that thing, because as we can see, some of the disasters are becoming real today. So that's the answer for that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I didn't quite get the answer there. Forgive me. So basically, my question is, it's been represented that this plant is necessary to power the South. However, your initial plans and the initial contract did not include power generation closer to the South. Only all the power generation would have been at Ukudu. And if that's correct, then is it true that this plant is necessary to provide power to the South? To be sited there to provide power to the South?
As was mentioned by some of the testifiers, no? The location of the plant down at Cabras provides the added benefit of being able to serve the South in case of other events in the system. Case in point, now that the main power plant is up north, you want to make sure that all the transmission lines to the South works, no? But if anything is cut off for any significant reason, then you can start up the 41 megawatt and feed the South. There's also one more thing that, you know, and again, I'm just giving you more information that is really not in the testimony, but we're also looking that if Ukudu is completed, we can relocate some of the diesel units that we have to the South. Case in point, right now, after a major storm devastates, say, Consona, that happened to us in 2002, the southern part of the island had to wait for weeks before we can even begin serving them energy, because the transmission lines all the way to the South were down. Our plan is to bring some of the diesel units, about 6 or 8 of them, and work with everyone to install it in a place like the substation in Umatic. That way, we don't need transmission lines to the South after a storm. We can serve the community of the South from Agat all the way to Inalahan, Malolo, Talafopo, through these generators by just feeding them into the distribution system. So that's part of our plan, which is all again contingent on us completing this new Ukudu plan. So it does have a benefit, Senator. That is not the what you call the crucial point why it's being relocated to Cabras, other than all the infrastructures that are there. You'll save us money. We're not going to be trucking fuel across the island to feed a power plant up in the north. The fuel, the pipelines are all there. The oil is about 300 feet away. And so therefore that makes it an ideal location at which we could operate at a lower cost, and was mentioned could also serve the southern part of the island, which also includes the military, AGAT, and everyone through that period. No?
Okay, that's another point. There's a lot of claims of cost savings with this proposed power plant, but the PUC order for GPA docket 2107 on page 8 says it would be, quote, difficult to quantify those at the present time, end quote. In other words, you're saying it's going to save money, but we don't have any idea of how much it will save or even how to quantify or calculate those savings right now. Just trust us, it's going to save something, correct?
Senator, if you look at page slide 14 and 15 of my presentation, that lays out the entire energy plan that will save the ratepayers of Guam. It will, if you look
but that
at
energy
it,
plan is inclusive of renewables, right? I'm talking specifically for this plant. Do you have a representation of how much this plant will specifically save?
If I may just answer your question, if you will, please. First of all, slide 14 will show you the plan, because that is where the entire community is gonna see. No, it shows you we're gonna be at 25% renewables. Okay, it shows you that we're gonna reduce our annual consumption by 1.2 million barrels a year. So therefore, at $100 a barrel, that's 120 million. At $80 a barrel, that's 80 million of less of fuel that we're paying for and money going off the island. No, it shows you the emissions is gonna be 99% cleaner. And again, it shows that the rates, the LEAC, is gonna go down from the 17 or so cents today, maybe even higher because of high increases in fuel pricing again, to about 11 cents a kilowatt hour. That's real. If you look at on the left side, those are the projects that are going underway, including the Ukudu plan, of course, which we're trying to, again, ensure that nothing gets in the way of getting that plan done. As for the 41 megawatt, as was mentioned by Attorney Hireki, in the initial contract, that's only like a standby generator for themselves to make sure that they bring the power out to us to serve their community. It's like a standby generator at the house. The 41 megawatt is an added value where now that 41 megawatt will not only say, for example, even in Barrigada Heights, if you will, not only will serve a house in Barrigada Heights, but now can serve the whole community of Barrigada Heights. It's dispatchable by us. It's more efficient. It's cheaper to operate and maintain. And again, it's something that will ensure that we can also retire other power plants, for example, other power plants within the system that cost more to operate and maintain today. So those are the added benefits of the 41 megawatt. So everything you see in this plan, in those pages, is what we're committed and have been moving forward to achieve and are achievable. No? And that's why we ask you for this 41 megawatt exemption to allow us. I heard they don't want to pay higher rates. This is going to accomplish that. I heard I want a clean environment. This is certainly going to provide a clean environment. Reliable power, no one wants a power outage. You can hear the testimony from the South. So again, Senator, this is the plan that we are moving and so close to achieving. And it's really something that we have for many, many, many years tried to put together and accomplish so that we finally get away from the erratic fuel oil prices that occur from year to year from the constantly changing LEAC. This will now help us because, again, we consume 2.7 million barrels of oil today. That's going to go down to 1.5. That's 1.2 million barrels less. And then as we add more renewables, when we add the 400 megawatts, of course, still subject to the PUC, CCU and PUC approval, we add the additional 40 megawatts and get to 50% renewables, we're going to drop that again. We're going to drop that at maybe another 500,000 barrels. So that's the name of, that's the whole vision of this is we continue, we have the foundation to continue and have 24/7 power. And then we continue to add renewables and therefore keep reducing our dependency on oil and therefore and at a stable and reasonable price. Therefore, the price is sustainable and over long periods of time, and the island achieves sustainability. So that's our plan, Senator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benavente. So you're talking about fuel savings, but CCU member Simon Sanchez said to Patty Arroyo on News Talk K57 yesterday that, quote, we save on fuel, but we have to pay KEPCO for the cost of the plant. And quote, the refinancing will help us also pay KEPCO. So my question is, will this new plant really save money if you're looking to refinance bonds with Bill 212 in order to save money, in order to, quote, help us also pay KEPCO?
Correct, Senator. The more we can lower our cost today, our cost today, the more savings we can provide to our consumers, no? Of course, the new power plant is not coming in at no cost. Of course, you go and buy a vehicle, you pay, but then your operating and maintenance costs is reduced. Your maintenance issues are reduced. So therefore, and again, all of this were vetted and worked through the PUC and approved through the PUC, because again, I've been going back to the PUC for very, very stringent evaluations on these projects, no? The concern of the PUC in the beginning about building a new power plant is we did not want the rates to go off the roof for our consumers. We did not want that to increase. So therefore, we laid out a plan how, after we completely build the Okudu plan, and these renewables we're putting on, which is targeted now for 2025, by 2024, but in 2025, the combination of refinancing, combination of more renewables, the combination of Ukudu, all of that together will result in the cost savings to the consumers, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25% or more. And again, that also allows us to continue to add more and more lower cost renewables and pass those savings on. The converse of that is not true. We will, if we don't do anything, we're going to be stuck up in the 17 cents a kilowatt hour. Why? Because we are already going to implement this year higher fuel costs for PD 8 and 9 and for Cabras 1 and 2 by converting to the fuel we are to provide clean air. That's going to be stuck with us. So therefore, your LEAC rates are going to get stuck if you don't do anything about it. And that's why the Ukudu plan is extremely important to provide lower costs to the consumers, which, by the way, Senator, I hear it and I feel it whenever I go through the island and understand the difficulty of having to pay so much energy and so much money for a very important necessity that the entire island needs. So that's my comment. It is a combination of all of this, and this has all been worked with through the PUC. And the net result, even through our presentations, is that there will be this saving to the ratepayers by building the new plan that we don't have today, and and stuff.
So with that, I actually do take issue with the representation that this plant will save money, because as you stated, it's actually a combination of things, the refinancing and other renewables being added to the portfolio altogether. In addition to that, originally this is actually an increase, because originally this was all part of the Ukudu power plant, and that whole thing had to be renegotiated. So originally with the Ukudu contract, 65 megawatts were going to be built up at Ukudu, but it's now being reduced to 41 megawatts. And in addition to that, you're going to have to pay an additional 4.42 million more annually for 41 megawatts than you were going to pay for 65 megawatts. Is that correct?
No, you're certainly not correct, Senator. Let me go back a little bit and reiterate what I just said. No, we are going to reduce with the new Ukudu power plant being very efficient. It's going to reduce our annual fuel imports or consumption of fuel from 2.7 down to about 1.5 million barrels a year. You take the difference, that's 1.2 million barrels reduction or savings to the consumer. At today's price, okay, it's say $100 a barrel. That's $120 million of less fuel savings. That is Ukudu itself in fuel savings. Then you pay Ukudu. So 120, and Ukudu costs is about 70 million a year, operation maintenance, capacity fee, and all of that. You already still have 50 billion in savings. The whole plan is to take the Ukudu plan savings, get the refinancing savings, and do all of that and give it back to the ratepayer. And again, that's the PUC that will decide that. But the concern was of the PUC is that we did not want to raise rates for the consumers again, as everyone doesn't want to do, even ourselves. No? So you can see, Senator, just the 1.2 million barrels of oil less than import. That has the savings, but of course you utilize all of that and then you come up with a net savings to the consumers, which is what we're trying to say is about 25%, But it also provides the opportunity for more savings, whereas in today, there's no opportunity really for that. It's just more cost. If fuel oil prices go up, that's why the LEAC has been going up.
But the contract for the proposed Cabras power plant is going to cost additional annually. Isn't that correct? The contract itself with KEPCO.
So
for operations and maintenance.
Let me explain that portion this way, The plan itself was again going to be there as necessary to help KEPCO in Ukudu when it is originally in Ukudu, and not really for additional benefits by the ratepayer. Right now, we have other machines, and I think we have a slide that shows the ages of all our power plants. Our power plants are all 30 some years old and 47 now for Cabras 1 and 2. Those power plants also as reserve units have to operate all the time, at some time, a period of time, reserve units. So therefore, being as reserve units, it costs us today to have it maintained, operated, and when it runs, it's not as efficient as the 41 megawatt. So therefore, when we move that 41 megawatt down to Cabras, we can start it anytime instead of those other costlier GPA units today which now allows us to retire them. So the net cost between the two, there's a net savings by having the 41 megawatt. So when you paying the, say for example, the fixed annual fixed O&M cost of $2 million, then we're going to be retiring others for that. But the efficiency of the plant is more efficient than a combustion turbine, and therefore there's huge fuel savings from that. So the net result is a benefit to the ratepayer. And that's the excitement of having to be able to have that 41 megawatt, including as what someone else also said, one of the testifiers, I forget which one that said, the generators can get on the line within about 1 to 3 minutes. If we lose something somewhere, we can push the button from the dispatch control channel and these units come on the line. We can do that for the 20 megawatt Better Do CT, the 20 megawatt Machetu CT. So again, those are added benefits for providing better reliability at a lower cost and allowing us to retire older legacy units and save money for the ratepayers. So that's the whole plan, Senator. And again, these are an important part of the overall our overall master plan. No?
Right, but another part of it is Bill 212, which is what I don't understand. If it's really going to save money, then why are you guys seeking refinancing bonds to save money to pay for the power plant?
Okay, Senator, do we want the people of today to pay for the power plant that everyone else is going to use in the future? Well, that's a policy goal that you can make, right? But then we're also saying today that the rates are too high. So how do we reduce that number? We take the debt that we have today, which is still it was for infrastructure that lasts 20, 30, 40 years. They're still going to be serving us 20 years from now. So therefore, instead of paying that, you reduce the monthly annual payment. You reduce your mortgage. It's like your house. You refinance to reduce your annual mortgage, your monthly and annual mortgage payment. So today, if we help, we're paying about $47 million a year for debt. Refinancing the 2012 bond will reduce that down to about 25 million. So there, I'm sorry. Today we're paying 47, so we bring it down to 47 minus 10, 37, about 35 million, no? That's 15 million through the whole process will be put in to pay together with the fuel savings, the power plant and everything, and then the net result will go back to the consumer. So in fact, they are going to be paying less today. Otherwise, you can keep that, not have the debt, but then your rates are going to end up being higher because you're paying for all the infrastructure that lasts for so many years more. You're paying for other people use of it in the future. You yourself are paying it today. So that's why you will want to refinance this. You want to spread that cost over the period of time where the structure is, and therefore reduce the cost of energy to the ratepayers today, who most especially really need it. No?
Okay, so, originally, this was all supposed to be done up at Ukadu. Now you're proposing to move part of it down to Cabras. The reason for that is because of issues with the permitting. Specifically, according to PUC's order for GPA docket 2107, page 9 says, there were several delays caused by the negotiations on a major source versus minor source permitting. So to move it down to Cabras is going to allow them to pursue minor source permitting. Then it goes on to read that while minor source permitting would be faster, it is, quote, potentially not economically feasible to KEPCO due to higher capital investment requirements to meet contract performance. In other words, to seek minor source permitting is going to cost more. So KEPCO initially went with the major source permitting in order to keep it all up at Ukudu. But because there were problems with that between the negotiations between GPA and KEPCO over this major versus minor source permitting, eventually it was determined you guys wanted minor source permitting, you needed minor source permitting, so you renegotiated with them. Why wasn't all of this sorted out before awarding the contract to Ukudu? To KEPCO for Ukudu? I mean, this is a major part of the contract. In fact, it seems like it's a make or break part of the deal. In fact, in the same PUC order, it is mentioned on page 10, and it's been mentioned here numerous times, that according to GM Beneventi, these economic feasibility issues had even led to the possibility of contract termination. In other words, it's a make or break issue. Why wasn't a make or break issue with the Ukudu contract negotiated before awarding this multi-billion-dollar contract to KEPCO for Ukudu?
I think the answer to that, Senator, is really we had certain criteria to be bidded out. No, we wanted the up to be up at the Ukudu. We wanted so much reliability. We wanted a 50% thermal efficiency, which was the key component of this scenario. And we wanted a reliability of and availability of the units. It also came about, of course, with all our discussions with the PUC, that because renewables were getting in the picture as perhaps the potential to achieve this contract. So therefore, the contract became more agnostic, when you say to a certain type. It was written to allow everyone to bid for the type of machinery that can meet the type of system that can meet our criteria. So they did come in that, and they did try to meet the deadline and as best as what they believe. And so that contract was awarded. Now, unfortunately, for whatever reason that they missed that as a potential longer term, understanding how EPA requires monitoring and all of that, I don't know, Senator. But what I did know was if we stayed on that path where it's not going to achieve our deadlines to satisfy US EPA and the consent decree, and we were still faced, we didn't have any updated consent decree, we were still faced with the hundreds of millions of dollars of penalties that they had to hammer over our head on. So I had to find a reasonable way to achieve this without impacting negatively our ratepayers. I am very happy to say in no uncertain terms that the contract that is there today is very, very, beneficial to our ratepayers, despite the change. That major change of allowing us to utilize that 41 megawatt will allow us additional savings and improved reliability. And again, that is how some of that thing happened. But again, the key here is that, as also was mentioned by Attorney Recchi, if we don't achieve meeting this consent decree, we have some very, very difficult situations. And again, yes, from the federal court, from our view of the federal court is one, but secondly, you're not going to have enough capacity to meet the generation needs of this island. And if you do try to bring in additional capacity, your rates are going to go up. And this is what I'm telling you from what I see. And I've thought about this for countless hours, Senator. So again, I'm not sure I can answer that question of why the minor major between them. All I know is that we had to go in the right direction to keep this contract as done as quickly as possible.
Well, really, that's my concern, was that why wasn't this all negotiated and sorted out in the beginning? Now you guys are coming back to us, asking us to allow an environmental exemption, and you're sort of putting all the blame on us that, hey, if you guys don't act on this, if you don't do anything about this, it's going to be disastrous. It's going to be this, it's going to cost more money, it's going to be that. But this should have all been sorted out in the beginning, because this is part of the same contract that had to be renegotiated. And now it's our fault all of a sudden that the thing's falling apart. And now you guys are coming to us saying, grant us an exemption. It all should have been sorted out in the beginning of this contract, the major, the minor source permitting, where to site this thing. I mean, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar contract here. That's my concern. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and move on and allow for my colleagues to ask some questions. If you have something you can respond, of course.
Yes, Senator, and again, my last response with it is that, yeah, you're correct. You mentioned this is over a $500 million contract. And of course, with that, it brings complexity and
$3 billion over the course of the term, though.
Challenges. Now, the question I have for you, Senator, is after we're showing you all of the changes of how the PD area is going to be clean and the benefits of all of that, why is it so, and I fail to understand why is it so difficult to provide this simple exemption, which is simple in my mind, no? I don't understand, because we were not going to put anything down there really that's going to be detrimental to everyone, including the employees that are working in the area, no? So again, why is it so difficult to get an exemption from for example, yourself, why is it become so difficult? I don't understand, but
I don't know. Why was it so difficult to get a major source air permit? You tell me.
So for the exemption down there, I'm not talking about anything else, but that's all. No? Okay, so I'll leave it like that, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor to my colleagues to ask their questions, beginning with Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to reserve to be last if possible. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I apologize. I will allow you to go last to close. My apologies. Senator Titagui.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to leave at 12 o'clock for another meeting, so I appreciate going first. I'd like to thank everyone who was here to testify. I hear your concerns. I've read your letters in your testimonies. It's not falling on deaf ears. If there's anyone who knows anything about ultra-sulfur diesel, it's myself. I introduced it in the 30th Guam legislature to require that anything coming into Guam has to be ultra-low sulfur diesel. Because of the change in the issues of air, I've also worked with GPA during that time to ensure that they use this type of fuel in their generators. Not only generators, but car emissions too as well. Vehicles were being made with only engines utilizing ultra-sulfur diesel fuel and not just standard diesel, which were breaking these vehicles down. Times are changing. We are being more conscious of air pollutions and what we're putting out into the air, especially. So, I listened carefully, and the one thing that I was hoping to see was a documentation from US EPA, and I think Mr. Hareki, you provided a lot of information that you also were given to your members at PUA to review and make their ultimate decision in voting in favor of this generator that will be placed down in PD. Was there any documentation at all provided from US EPA that the emissions that will be coming out of this, the 41 mega plant generator, I call it the generator, is this safe for the environment? Do you have any documentations from US EPA or Guam EPA?
Directed to me, Senator?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Good
Thank
afternoon, Mr. Harecki. Thank you again for your testimony too.
Thank you, Senator Titlequee. You know, what the PUC was doing at the time was amending the energy conversion agreement between GPA and KEPCO. So GPA had come to us, the PUC, to ask that the energy conversion agreement be amended to take out the 65 megawatt plant at Ukadu and substitute the 41 megawatt plant at PD. We didn't have anything specific from the US EPA except for the consent decree. And the consent decree, of course, already required that at that time, actually, the Ukadu plant was supposed to be built earlier, I believe, towards the end of 2022. But that was another change that the PUC also approved. So then what happens is the US EPA had to come back and approve changes to the ECA and to the consent decree. And my understanding is they have done that they've come back and they've approved things such as the extension of the deadline for completion until April of 2024. They approved changes in various other deadlines. So in my mind, that is certainly a, if not express, a tacit approval by the US EPA of the plans that KEPCO and GPA have agreed to in terms of the 41 megawatt plant. So that is now a part, as I mentioned, is kind of an integral part of the whole Ukadu project. And my interpretation is that GPA has to complete the entire project by April of 2024. I hope I've answered your question.
I'll allow Mr. Benavente to continue on and talk to us about US EPA and their comments to this using the.
Yes, it was a very difficult negotiation, most especially again because the October 22, 2022 date could not be met for various reasons, of course, including pandemic, labor issues and all of that. But before we can agree to the new April 2024 date, we had to satisfy some red line conditions for US EPA. And that is that we can meet the ambient air quality standard of April 2023 next year. So therefore we did modeling that which we had sent back to them, vetted back and forth, and which they approved at the end, that will convert PD 8 and 9 to 0.0015% sulfur, the same fuel, which will be the 41 megawatt, and that we will burn 0.2% sulfur at Cabras by the end of this year. Okay. So that combination of modeling was submitted to US EPA, and that's really in the consent decree, which allow us now to complete the plan by April 2024. So in effect, what the US EPA agreed to the change, which is again, it cleans the air substantially even before the main power plant come on the line.
Well, I'm going to hope, and probably sometimes it's not a matter of hoping, it's probably putting in legislation to ensure that whatever you're putting in that 41 megawatt generator, that it is ultra low sulfur decent or even lower, instead of the 15 ppms, that it could even be lower than that. We don't want to see used oil being used as have done in some of the other power plants. And combining it. So we want to make sure that it's a purely ultra low sulfur diesel. I think it'd be very helpful, Mr. Benavente, is to get a documentation from the US EPA with regards to the emissions that are going to be, let out in that area, and if there is any harm. I mean, if it's sometimes they say that nowadays with the ultra low sulfur diesel and these engines that are built, to take this kind of real clean fuel, that vehicles provide even worse when it comes to emissions, and that driving by is even worse. So I think that would be very helpful, especially gives comfort to many of us who are concerned about the quality of air coming out. Also, my last question, Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Torres, Victor Torres mentioned earlier that the usage of this 41 megawatt generator is probably going to be only as needed. So it's not something that's going to run 24 hours. So Mr. Benavente, can you tell me what is your estimated, down to right, how long do you think it will be running in a day, and what time it would be in that day? If you have.
The estimate I made was probably around 3% of the year, perhaps. No, 3%. Really, and again, the only time that it run for like a little less than a month is once every 4 years when we have to overhaul the steam turbine up at the new power plant. Other than that, it's really a standby, and sometimes it may not even run for the whole year except for some testing.
So about 3%. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Benedicti, but I have to attend. Again, I appreciate everyone's testimony, and please rest assured that we will do our due diligence to ensure the safety of our people. And thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tedegui. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know it's been a long process since this morning in providing testimony, and I certainly concur with my other colleagues that have spoken. We certainly appreciate hearing the views and the varied views that have been provided. It's a challenging issue, and I've been down this road before. I think those of us that were around in the 1990s, I was at Guam EPA at the time. And for those of us that recall the situation that we were in, we ended up in a situation where essentially we did not and were not able to accommodate the growing demand for power on Guam. We had older operating facilities, and hence we ended up with rolling power outages and ended up being a very expensive, painful, time-consuming process for our community, for our business sector, and the list goes on. It's almost 31 years ago since John Benavente and I had to go to US EPA in San Francisco to try and address the permitting process for fast-track generators that ended up being very complicated to run, very expensive to run, and did not provide the degree of reliability in our power system that we wanted and needed at the time, particularly during a time of significant growth in our economy and construction on Guam. I understand the environmental concerns. I'm very much an advocate for protecting our environment. I ran many years ago very much on the issue of environmental protection when most people weren't talking about it, thinking about it, or cared about it. And I certainly don't want to put our community in a situation where we are going to continue any type of unhealthy situation. And I have, attended the briefing that Mr. Benavente provided at GPA. I also sat in on the virtual meeting that occurred with the mayor and the Municipal Planning Council in the village of PD in discussing this issue, to also hear and listen to their concerns and relay my comments. So I understand the situation GPA is in right now, and ultimately the ratepayers of Guam and the consumers here on Guam that are using power. Right now, I'm in my office, as other senators are. We have our lights on and the power is running. And aside, of course, from how we use our power bill and issues with that, overall, we've had reliable power for quite some time. We're in a situation where I see that's going to change if we don't address how we're going to put online additional capacity, including the fact that, yes, I would like to see everything be renewable and everything be environmentally compatible, but I understand also it's not going to happen overnight. And we are going to have to go through a transitioning process as technology continues to evolve to make a more effective and, not just cost effective, but I guess the means in which our energy and our impact to the environment and to the world will lessen as time goes on. I hope that continues to be the case, but we know it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen to meet the current demands of our community for safe and reliable power. But in those meetings, and I did relate to Mr. Beneventi, I want some sense, if I were to support this bill, if maybe it's something I amend and put in the bill, but I do want to have a third-party monitoring of emissions from this facility. I understand and I very much recognize the need to retire the existing units at Cabras. We discussed the fact that, when I was at the Port Authority of Guam, we had an incident when the base loads were brought up, and our employees, including our crane operators, were unloading a vessel. And as a result of the emissions that came out of Cabras in bringing up that baseload generator at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we ended up having 6 employees that had to go to the hospital because of the impact they suffered as a result of breathing in what was discharged from Cabras. And so that obviously is a concern that I recognize. I want to see those older plants retired. I want to see more clean and efficient plants. And as time goes on, our continued conversion to alternate energies that are more environmentally friendly and compatible, I think we want to embrace that. We're not fully there yet. And it's unfortunate for GPA that this partnership to build these solar panels at Marbo ended up being such an environmental catastrophe, because it didn't add on to the agenda of publicly, giving the best impression for GPA and its partners with regards to how that whole situation was handled. But I still recognize the fact that GPA is working towards looking at alternate environmentally friendly, compatible energy sources. So with that, I do want to ask Mr. Beneventi if that is something that GPA will put in place so that we have some comfort level, because anyone, and everyone who's a parent, a resident, whatever the case may be, is going to want to be concerned about air quality. The history of that has not been the case. The technology has been old, and that's the reality of where we've come from. I understand it's not something you want to see for the future, but what comfort level do we have for the students at the school? And again, I mean, you're talking about the Port Authority and the other people that work down at that part of the island. We want to ensure better air quality. We've seen the buildings be painted white down there and turn gray within a very short period of time. And I have a car that rusted very quickly that I have that, as a result of having been at the port for 6 years. So I want to get your feedback and your commitment with how you're going to address that, because that to me is the most critical thing I want to know, whether I'm going to vote favorably on this bill or not, is how can the GPA, because we've had a track record that's not always been consistent, essentially demonstrate that GPA can maintain air quality for the students, the residents, and the employees at the port and other operations in that area of PD.
Yes, Senator, and took to task what you had noted at the municipal council meeting. And yeah, we're committed to place monitors at monitoring, the Port Authority of Guam, the St. Rios Middle School, and that part of the PD village. So our team has already begun working on that, and actually we made a survey recently, and we will proceed in putting that monitoring system. So then, yes, we'll have independently monitored and reported out, and then you can see the changes that occur over time. And again, I'm very happy too, because I've always thought about that. I'm very happy that yes, we're converting PD 8 and 9 to diesel, ultra low sulfur diesel, and that will be eventually we'll eventually be retiring Cabras 1 and 2, because again, that is the one that the most provides burning high sulfur fuel, doesn't provide the cleanest possible alternative. So we're committed. I've already started the task to make that happen, and I can assure you we'll put a program together over the next several months to ensure that we can communicate on a regular basis the air quality within that area. Yeah.
With regards to the construction, because you're essentially having to construct, I understand, a new facility. Is that what you're looking at as this backup? Essentially what you're looking at constructing at Cabras is a backup system to the new plant, looking at constructing in Harmon. With regards to the issues and concerns originally that were raised concerning tsunamis and things of that nature, how are you going to address that with the construction of a new plant? Because originally we were all looking forward to the demise, shall I say, of Cabras altogether, and seeing that converted to something else that would be more compatible. So what is being done differently to address what originally was the issues concerning why, including the fact that these are age facilities, of shutting down Cabras completely?
Yes, the Ukudu contract really is about the 198 megawatt facility. The standby generators were all part of it to provide it facility additional reliability. With the 198 megawatts plus the other capacities that we have on higher ground, we have over 350 megawatts of capacity that is not susceptible to tsunamis. So that would still accomplish the goal and the reason why we were putting it up at Ukudu. The 41 megawatt, yes, there's some risk on the tsunami. It's a little higher ground than the Cabras power plant itself. However, even if that plan was destroyed, then it would have to be recovered, and of course there would be insurance by the owner of that facility to make that accomplished. But our main key part was to be ensured that we have enough capacity on higher grounds to be able to serve the entire island. Today, we can probably serve only about 35 to 40% of the island should anything destroy. All our base loads, which is Cabras 1 and 2 and PD 8 and 9 and that are down there today. When the Okudu is completed, we have adequate capacity to serve everyone for a minimum of 1 month because there will have storage, fuel stored enough to operate the Okudu plan for a whole month after a tsunami. So that gives us an opportunity to go in, fix what we can, get the system back. No? So that's accomplished. That has not changed with the Okudu main power plant contract. No?
So I can also ask Mr. Beneventi, why does it have to be constructed at Cabras? Why couldn't, if it's going to be a new facility, why can't GPA locate this back up elsewhere? Why does it have to be Cabras in particular?
So, it's also part of not in my backyard, but also we've looked at all the other substations. The only other substation that it makes sense to put it on really was the Marble substation, which is still owned by the Navy. And again, to try and complete it within this period, we have to go request for a lease or all of this. And the cost would have been higher to accomplish that. Even the truck, we'll have to truck oil from Ukudu just to this new plant or other areas. At the location at Cabras power plant, we had the fuel oil tanks there. We had the transmission line. It lowers the cost for the complete construction of this power plant and also the operating costs for GPA. So we looked at other areas. There's really not much left to put it on, Senator. And again, 41 megawatts. Even if I wanted to put that at Umatic, I can't put it in Umatic. It's not big enough space, and that's too much energy, too much capacity on the other end of the string. So really, we looked at other areas, and this was the pretty, I can say, the only really feasible site and best site for us to, this cost site for us to put it on.
Looking at the history of the original law that was put in place with regards to this distance requirement for the schools, I mean, originally it had to deal with the Mechechi location, and I guess at the time, and John, because you are such a historian, having been at GPA as long as you have, I mean, you recall the reason as to why, because there were complaints by the adjacent elementary school when that was first brought online, and I understand since then GPA has hired the stack at that particular location. So can you elaborate on that for clarification? Because, we understand the law was put in place in 1993. There was a reason for it. There was impact to students at the time and faculty members that were, working and going to school at the adjacent location. And since that time, with what actions have been put in place to correct that issue? I also want you to elaborate, have there been any further concerns since 1993 with regards to the operation of that facility adjacent to that school?
You're correct, Senator. The original stack height recommended at that time was 45 feet, 45-foot stack. Running the plan thereafter created some environmental issues, the fumes and all of that from the school. No? So therefore, it was readjusted up to 150 foot, still and burning 0.5% sulfur fuel at the time. And that corrected the problem there at Okudu back in the 90s, which then again, because it was more a standby generator, so it didn't operate as much as it is really actually doing these days. But then subsequent to that, and again, this is all part of, remember, bringing in the 0.0015% sulfur where GPA will, by GPA having agreed to do that, all of that for the island, it can allow one fuel source be used for the power plant and for the new vehicles that are required to burn ultra low sulfur diesel. So we changed that again, which improved again from a 0.5, which was marine diesel, it improved it to the 0.0015. We haven't had any issues or complaints from that area. And again, like I mentioned, for the past 4 or 5 years, Machechi plant has been running about 4,000 hours out of the 8,000 hours, 760 hours per year. And so that has corrected that problem. And again, we're not looking to put, of course, even the new Okudu plan, we try to make sure to stay out of the 1,500 feet as per the law. No? But here, Cabras is what it is the industrial area that we had. We can put in, we don't have to buy property, all the infrastructures are there. It's an ideal site for the thing.
I just have a couple more questions, John, with regards to the construction of your new facility. I mean, you talked about the fact that this new power plant is going to be able to adjust to alternate fuels. Can you elaborate on that, just to update us and the public with regards to what the benefits are going to be with the new plant? And then I also want you to elaborate. I know I can always come back if we forget the question, but I want you to elaborate on what the alternatives are if we don't proceed. And then the last thing is going to go back to my issue with Cabras, because I'm not only going to want to make sure there's monitoring there, but I'm also going to want to make sure you guys have protocols in place and proper notifications to the adjacent partners down there when you need to bring up, or, if the unit goes down and you need to bring it up. So we don't, there's awareness and consensus and understanding and partnerships going on down there that in some cases in the past have not always happened, that have led to the problems that we've encountered, with the older units operating.
Yes, first, Senator, on the Cabras and the startup of the Cabras units, we do have that protocol in place now where we call up before, and again, that was a result of the actions that you're concerned, and of course, rightfully so. So that's being addressed, and again, we can put that all as part of one plan. We can show it to you so that at least from your experience of what you've seen, you're satisfied with the plan. And again, we're committed to make that happen. But today there is some product to make sure we call people up. Secondly, about diversified energy. The PUC, CCU, PUC, and ourselves really looked at the new power plant burning ultra low sulfur diesel primarily, and must be capable to burn natural gas, which is again cleaner than ultra low sulfur diesel. So again, the new power plant is being constructed. The generators can burn both, and the pipelines are being constructed all the way from Cabras to Okudu with 2 pipelines, one for natural gas and one for diesel, in preparation that once it's vetted out and once everyone agrees, we can bring in natural gas, because it does lower, again, there's additional savings for bringing in natural gas, including lower operating costs, because the machines operate cleaner, better, last longer. So again, that's the diversity of fuel source. Then the other part of the plan is as we add more renewables, initially Ukudu is going to be running what they call about 75% of for whatever period of time it will run, right, like a whole year. But 75% capacity factor, we call it. When you put more renewables on over the between now and 2030, then that capacity factor is going to come down. So we'll be running it more like somewhere around 60, 55% capacity factor. Because the more we put renewables, the less fuel it consumes, the less capacity, the less that Ukudu runs. See, so we have a lot of base load capacity at Ukudu. The 41 megawatt is only a reserve. If something happens that we have to make repairs, and the renewables are going to constantly decrease the amount of energy we produce from fossil fuel, reducing the amount of import of oil and reducing the amount of emission. So that's the plan, and that's the opportunity that the new power plant provides us.
So John, to wrap up, I mean, I would like to know, and I think it'd be important the public to know, if we don't move forward with this, and again, we lived through, load shedding, and we lived through the period of time, the legislature politically, of course, back then we controlled the rates and pretty much kind of the operations of the Guam Power Authority through legislation. And we saw where that led. That's one of the reasons I was such an advocate of supporting the creation of the CCU and breaking out GPA and the other utilities from the direct political oversight, because we saw where that led us, and it wasn't in a very good place. Our people really suffered during that time, especially during a time of tremendous economic growth on Guam, that we've not seen since then. Where do we go from here? And again, you're part of the institution of GPA, and you help get us out of that. How long will GPA be able to sustain right now? And every now and then we have roaming power outage here and there. Maybe it's repaired the system, whatever the case, but not anywhere what we were going through back in the chaos of the early 1990s. What do you foresee right now if we don't move forward with this? And we can argue among ourselves about all these issues, but when the sun sets literally on this, where are we with regards to GPA's capability to continue operating with its existing system if we don't move forward with the construction of this new power plant, and obviously the requirement of having this backup at Cabras? Where are we going to be, and when are we going to get there?
Under slide 15 of my presentation, or in the thing, that sums it all up. First of all, we can work with the capacity we have for the next 2 to 3 years to achieve until the Okudu power plant is completed. But if we don't do anything, then yes, you're back to the load shedding blues of the 90s. No, the alternative to that is, if you're not gonna pass this, then we need to bring in temporary power or whatever. Not temporary anymore. What is going to be your future source of power? So yes, page 15 of what we provided really shows, yes, first of all, remember federal court, the way they could come in and say, well, it's the federal court that's saying you must comply with the consent decree. And I'm not a lawyer, but like what Fred understands and knows and tells me in non-certain terms the severity of this consent decree. If we don't meet it, and more importantly, because we couldn't provide an exemption for 200, 300 feet, then what would the courts do? They could come in again and end up to be like what happened to the Ordo Dam or other areas. No. Secondly, again, there's a lot of load growth that is going on this island. The military is coming in to accomplish building all these facilities. More businesses, affordable homes are coming on. We can't meet that growth. Then the renewables, I can achieve the mandate of 50% or anything like that. I'm just gonna have to try and keep the lights on. in whatever which way I can go. So there's not that immediate focus on achieving the renewable portfolio. And last but certainly not the least, ratepayers' cost is going to go up because we're going to have to bring in more machines. They're not going to be as efficient as the base loads that we have today, because you're not going. The Ukudu plan is an extremely, in my opinion, a gift to us in terms of its efficiency. It's so efficient; it can save us millions of dollars in fuel costs. So, like Fred mentioned earlier, we're really in dire consequences if we don't accomplish our plan. And again, one may say, well, it's just 41 are going to kill. Well, you know, I don't control all the variables within that. I am trying my best to make sure that nothing gets in the way of getting this plan up, which is the cornerstone to add more renewables, make sure the air is clean, and lower the power rates for our customers. Because right now at 17 cents a kilowatt hour again, I'm sure there's a lot of people struggling. And again, we want to get it down towards the 20 cents or so. And why is that? Because when it was a 20-cent, Senator, and one of the most popular people on the island, thank you, John, wow, the power rates are good. No, it becomes more and more affordable, right? But you've been here, stay with me. The picture has not been always good, up and down on fuel costs, but always heading up on a 30 to 45 degree angle. And so we want to end that. And what I have before you is really, I'm committed, and it is achievable, and we're well on our way to make it happen. And the proof is in the pudding. I will be accountable for this plan. I am accountable. So in 3 years to 4 years, and it's not been accomplished, and I'm still, you know, I hope I'm still alive in that period of time, but you can come to me and say, well, I didn't achieve what I provided before you. So with some help, this will happen, Senator, and I will be very, very happy for the ratepayers of Guam.
Well, I'm not going to belabor it any longer. I certainly appreciate the time the chairman has provided me, but certainly, Mr. Beneventi, you know, I'm going to definitely hold you to task with regards to the monitoring requirement, and again, the protocols with regards to all the neighboring interest in the village of PD, because I think we all, and I don't doubt for you as well, and the GPA family, we're going to want to ensure the safety and welfare of the employees at GPA and the employees at the port and the supporting industries that are down there, and certainly the residents and the children that go to school at that school in PD. I think we all collectively agree that that's a priority, and we've got to balance that with the growing demand for power and the need for power in our community, because right now everything's okay because the lights are on. But I think once those, you know, once that goes the other way, as we've experienced, you're going to have a community in uproar, and understandably so. I mean, we can't do the things we need to do without having the basic ability of accessing power in our community. So with that, thank you, Mr. Beneventi, for answering my questions. And certainly thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to be able to ask these questions of Mr. Beneventi. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Duenas, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, and I certainly concur with the retiring speaker, Senator Brown. She covered a lot of the ground that I was going to also inquire about. So at this time, I just wanted to make sure that I was here throughout this presentation to hear the very balanced perspective, I guess, that's been presented today. I certainly and am excited about the young people that have showed up today and their desires, you know, to preserve our environment and to see our island going forward and what it can accomplish in the future. But I do also believe that, you know, it is very critical at this point with the presentation that's been made to be able to sustain going forward and to be able to achieve that. Mr. Beneventi, I guess I would just ask one more time. I've heard this presented by the CCU a number of times, that actually with the renewables that are coming online, you're actually in advance of what you were formerly going to be required for renewables. And once again, just to restate, the fact that this particular plant under the bill that we're considering in terms of the integrated master plan and what it's going to require for the renewables to operate, the critical nature of that, so that we could, try to let those younger generation and those who have come online to know that this actually is an opportunity to facilitate moving towards those renewables as opposed to the opposite. So if you could just reinforce that, and I want to congratulate you on the plan you've put forward and that what you've achieved so far. Seduce Masi, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator. And yes, you are correct. We hear the voices of our younger generation. No, I hear the voices, and I'd like to assure them that this is the plan that actually will achieve what they're asking for. And of course, it may not be at the speed that they're requesting. They, we may say that they may want it today or tomorrow, but as we can see, even the whole nation is looking at 2045, 2050, and ourselves, we're trying to achieve that much faster. But again, the system, the legacy system, has to be able to accommodate and to accept more and more and thousands and so of generators talking together and operating to give you a very smooth quality of electricity, no? And so that is what we're working on. We will make it happen, which is what I hear them wanting to see. And it's just that it does take some time to make it happen. And this is actually the cornerstone to the delivery of their dreams, no? Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much.
And just in closing, in the presentation as well, which I think GPA and CCU and others can continue to push forward, is there are systems that are very aggressive, particularly in California and some of the other states that have been very aggressive, but they've seen the growing pains of that issue. They still want to get there, but they've had to rethink and go back to making sure that they have the stabilized generation in order to get to the renewables as technology continues to develop. And I just think that's critical for our island. We have to sustain ourselves at this point in order to get there. And I know that Victor Torres was on earlier. He's the younger generation as well as an engineer, Mr. Benavente. Gonna fill your shoes real quick, I'm sure. And I was encouraged that you got young people like that who probably think along the lines of a lot of our young people presenting today, that he's the future also to get us there. Seduce Mas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask a few questions. And I know that many questions have already been asked. So I've been trying to follow along as best as possible, but I'd like to follow up on just a couple. So it looks like the US EPA, of course, controls the deadlines here that you say if we don't meet, that's the big disaster for Guam. It's meeting this deadline so the consent decree penalties do not fall down on us. And in order to do that, but it seems to me also that the US EPA also controls the permitting process. And could you just confirm that, first of all? As for the permitting between minor source or major source permitted, are we looking at a US EPA permitting, or are you talking about local permits for that? Who are you dealing with for those permits?
Under PSD, you would have been dealing only with, not only, but more the approval all of US EPA. Under the local permitting, under minor source, you deal with the Guam EPA, which of course, through consultation with the US EPA. Now, there's two, even within the, Madam Speaker, within the US EPA, as I have learned and to this day understand, the enforcement department of US EPA is the consent decree component that we deal with and set the dates. When we go to permitting, air permitting, there's the permitting department. They're really independent of each other, and one does not have to, the enforcement cannot tell the air permitting that you will approve the GPA permit. So we have to go through a process, and throughout this, and that's one of the things I mentioned earlier, we had to do a modeling of all the emissions to show that we can meet the April 2023 deadline. So that was through the enforcement group, the permitting group, and ourselves proving that that could be accomplished. So those are the entities, and even within the entities, we encourage one to please let the other know that of the importance of this project, but everyone has, the different office spaces don't have to listen to the other.
Okay, well, that explains what I'm asking is it's because US EPA controls both the deadline and the permitting process and potential delays in the permitting process, right? That why aren't we just negotiating with them? So, okay, so I understand what you said. And so it looks to me like, so Guam, we have the option of either finding a different site for the 41 MW unit, and you've explained just an answer to Senator Brown why this is the site that you prefer and that there were no other sites that you found that can put this on. So it's either we find another site or we go back to the original and we change the permitting process, right? We go back to the 65 or we go back to Ukudu and put it up there and change the minor permitting to the major permitting, or right? That we change that process and we get an extension from US EPA in order to do that. And I just wanted to confirm, I know Senator Taitukui asked about US EPA's approval of the 41 MW unit down there at Cabras. And I'm reading in the order that says US EPA has indicated it is not opposed to change the diesel location and the permitting process to minor source. It believes that the amendment would address the avoiding of delays in the permitting process. I don't know, does that sound to you pretty solid, Mr. Beneventi, that they will not delay you again in permitting that 41 MW down at Cabras?
There's never a guarantee, but what's the guarantee right now for us really is if we proceed, if the KEPCO and its lenders, they let the money go, the lenders let the money go, then KEPCO can proceed in getting the Ukudu plan going. Of course, they're still working on the air permit at this time, going back and forth, but we believe that would happen as soon as possible. But the key here now, because of this, what you call it, 41 megawatt, it would have its own permitting process also.
Right.
But
that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah,
yes.
It would have its own permitting process, and again, but we can't start that until we satisfy their concern about the public load of 1,500 feet. And so we are also working with US EPA on trying to get that plan, an understanding of how to permit it, so that we can achieve the goal that we're trying to do today.
All right.
But it does have its own separate permitting, the Ukudu plan and the one.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because I hate to see us sacrifice to, split them up, put one down at Cabras, despite the, objections of the community or some of the community, and then get delayed by the permitting process for that unit down there because of other concerns, right? And after you've already, invested in this type. And so I don't know, I just feel like US EPA is controlling the deadlines, yet they're controlling the permitting and the delays in permitting and the, what you have to negotiate with them as to which one you're going to go with here. And I'd like to see their approval in advance if possible, so that we know in the end, when we change the plan and decide to put the 41 megawatts, that we're not in the end still going to violate the consent decree and still be in that position that we're all trying to avoid here, and that you're putting, the legislature's feeling the pressure of, if you don't do this, we're going to all suffer the penalties of that consent decree. And so we need to know for sure that if we do this, are we going to be, are we sure we're going to meet these timelines? And are you sure that 41 megawatt plant is going to get approved? Those are the types of assurance I'd like to see.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure too that there was no local permitting that was delaying this as well. So I'm glad to hear it's not local permitting.
Judge Gageboat last week, I believe, approved the federal order for the April 2024 date. Before that, they were going through the federal process to get that approved, and finally that has been approved. Now it's incumbent on us and the contractor to achieve that April 2024 date at this point. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying not to give them any reason to delay this plan. But right now, our new goal, that April 2024 has been approved by US EPA.
All right, and so final, just to end, there's been so much excellent testimony, and I want to thank everyone who's testified. But for me, I want to see if we can in advance, or, if we can see before we pass this bill, what EPA says about the 41 megawatt plant being built at down there at Cabras, right? What do they say? Are they going to permit that? In other words, are they going to say that it meets, air quality standards and that it's safe for the people of Guam? I'd like to see that if we can. And I know it feels like we're kind of gambling on that almost. And I don't want to feel like we're gambling. I want to feel like it's pretty set if that's the course that we're going to take. That's all. But thank you again, Mr. Benavente, Mr. Harecki, and all of those that testified.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. If I may, I'm being told by our audiovisual department that we need to take a break so they can reset, because they can only do this in 4-hour time slots. So we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll resume and allow the rest of our colleagues to ask questions. So with that, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you.